Now, if I had my work cut out for me with Shadow the Hedgehog's story, this one is gonna be even more difficult, because I gotta try to convince you that Sonic 06 does, in fact, have a good story. Oh boy, here we go. So starting off, Sonic 06 begins in the country of Soliana, and we're introduced to the character of Princess Elise, and they are having a celebration in the name of their sun god Solaris. And then Sonic shows up to come check out the festival. He runs past a large crowd of people, and the wind caused by him running by catches Elise, and that wind, it makes her think, oh, that was familiar somehow. What's going on there? She resumes the festival, and then we cut over to Sonic, who is watching from afar, and we watch as her little feather floats up into the sky. And then, the story ends. What? What the fuck? What's going... What? Okay. I guess that's the story of what the fuck? What's going on? What happened? Why is there no story in this game? Why was any of that even there? I'm confused. What? Okay. Well, I guess that was a pretty bad story considering it was nothing, but I mean, it's kind of harmless, isn't it? Very weird that they would make the story so nothing, I guess. But I would say that's certainly not worthy of all the hate this game's story gets. I guess it wasn't good, but that's mainly virtue of the fact that the story doesn't really exist. So, that's the story of Sonic 06. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Okay, for real now. Sorry, I just had to do that joke. It was too good. I couldn't possibly pass up the opportunity. Oh, and by the way, I was totally full of shit before. This game has a terrible story. And while it would be easy to just go, Sonic 06 has a bad story, Sonic kisses a human, ha, and then we move on, where's the fun in that? No, I'm gonna be breaking down this story in detail and pointing out every single problem that it has that I can find. Because who else is gonna do it? Though, I will be fair, I'll give it credit where it's due. When it does things that are good, I'll point those out as well. And to be honest, I'm willing to give this game's story a little bit of leeway considering the game was massively unfinished, so there's probably lots and lots of stuff that they had to cut out of the story. That said, I can't tell you what Sonic 06's story was supposed to be. We only got what we got, so this is what I'm going to be talking about. So now at the actual story of the game, we are still at the Festival of Solaris for Soliana with Princess Elise and all that. But during the festival, Elise has a vision of a giant fire demon Satan monster thing. And like any good anime character, she just says, oh, it's nothing, whatever. And that is when Eggman attacks. He is here to kidnap Princess Elise and also take the Chaos Emerald she has for yet not 100% certain reasons. Something about the Flames of Disaster, which we can presumably guess has something to do with the giant fire demon. And of course, this is when Sonic shows up, as he is not gonna let Eggman do whatever he wants. And Elise has another vision while looking at Sonic of someone else. Sonic, of course, destroys all of Eggman's robots and grabs Elise and makes a break for it. And at the end of the scene, we are teased with the character that Elise had a vision of. So right off the bat, there are a couple of things to talk about with this story, because similar to Sonic Adventure 2's opening, this opening scene is clearly meant to convey to us that this is a little bit different than the typical Sonic stories that we're used to. It is similar to the adventure-style stories in that it goes for the big, epic, grandiose thing, but particularly Sonic 06's story very much has a feel of like a JRPG story in many ways, and as we go further, you're going to see more and more elements of that kind of thing. And another thing that's worth noting about Sonic 06 is that while Shiro Maekawa did write for this game, he was not the only writer. One of the writers that worked on this game was someone that worked on Sonic X, which is very important and will come up a couple of different times throughout this video. But right off the bat, one thing I want to mention is how Sonic's characterization is a little bit different here than how Shiro Maekawa writes Sonic. Sonic in this game doesn't really make too many snarky jokes or sarcastic comments or things like that. In fact, Sonic's character in this game is kind of closer to his original characterization from like the classic era of Sonic games. Which is something I personally approve of. I prefer that style of Sonic over Shiro Maikawa's version of him. So anyway, back to the story. While Sonic did manage to get away with Elise, it's not long before he's confronted with Eggman's robots again, and while Sonic is fighting them off, Eggman manages to sneak in from behind and capture Elise. However, she does manage to throw her Chaos Emerald over to Sonic to prevent Eggman from getting that, and of course Sonic promises to save Elise. However, and this is where we get into the first problem of this game's story, which there are a lot of, by the way. I wrote a list while going through the cutscenes to keep track of everything. Some of them are more substantial, some of them are just small details that don't really matter, but whatever, I'm gonna point out everything. First thing, Sonic is gonna go after Eggman to find Elise, right? Well, apparently he's in no rush to do that, because the very next scene, we're in daytime now, so apparently Sonic just did nothing all night long while Eggman was doing who knows what with Elise. Anyway, Sonic runs into Tails, who's in Soliana because his existence revolves around Sonic, and he decides to tag along with Sonic to help him save the princess, of course. And then Sonic and Tails chase after the egg carrier, but it ultimately just ends up getting away, so this entire scene is pointless. That's another thing, there are a couple of cutscenes here and there that really just do nothing to forward the story whatsoever in Sonic 06, so for the most part, I'm just gonna skip over those scenes. So Sonic and Tails manage to find Eggman's base and get to Elise, and they manage to free Elise and escape, but Eggman's robots are chasing after them, so they decide to split up. Tails is gonna make a distraction so Sonic and Elise can get away. One thing I want to point out here is that Tails really doesn't have, like, his tinkerer, inventor element of his character present in this game's story whatsoever, which really isn't that much of a problem, I guess. It's just kind of weird that that was such a big part for him, and here it's just not present at all. But at least they are showing that Tails is fairly competent at this point, you know, after all of his arcs in the previous games. Though, to be honest, Tails really doesn't even have to be here. This is like the only major thing that he kind of contributes to the story. Besides this, Tails could just not be in this game whatsoever, and it would change almost nothing. So Sonic and Elise manage to escape from Eggman and go to Windows XP land, and this is where we begin sowing the seeds of the romance between Sonic and Elise. Because it starts with like, oh, Elise is thanking Sonic for saving her, and how could she ever repay him? And then, oh no, Sonic is injured, even though we can't actually see the injury whatsoever, but whatever. And so she immediately rushes to treat him, and of course he's looking away, like scratching his nose all embarrassed like. Like, this isn't even really Sonic right now, this is insert anime protag boy. Like, this is just so, like, weirdly, like, tropey in anime, and I don't know why we're inserting Sonic into a scenario like this. And a lot of the ways they try to spur on the romance between these two is through, like, really bad melodrama. Because Elise is all feeling guilty that Sonic got injured while rescuing her, and then Sonic's all...
Smile.
And then a butterfly lands on Sonic's nose. Oh, it's so romantic, isn't it beautiful? And you're like, what the fuck is this bullshit? And Sonic's response here, what he says... I'm not gonna say this is out of character for Sonic per se, but he acts weirdly sentimental around Elise for no real reason. It's very bizarre and pretty forced. And then Sonic asks Elise about what Eggman was talking about with the flames of disaster, and she explains that her country's god Solaris one day is prophesied to destroy the world through his wrath, and that wrath takes the form of the flames of disaster. And actually, 10 years ago, in an event where Elise's father died, it almost happened. And of course now Eggman's goal is to gain control of Solaris and those flames of disaster or whatever and take over the world. Yada yada yada, we got it. But then, of course, the melodrama kicks back in, and Elise is all worried, and then...
Sonic? Sonic! 待って! そんなに速く走れない!
余計なこと考えない!顔を上げて走るんだ! 気持ちいいだろ？
ええ、こんなに速く走ったの初めて。
走り出さなきゃ何も始まらないんだぜ。悩む暇があったら走るんだ。
I like what Sonic says to her there of, if you're worried about something, then run. Obviously, he's not literally saying run from your problems or anything like that. For Sonic, running is representative of doing something, of taking action, of being proactive. And so, he's telling her that if you're worried about something, you have to do something about it. And I kind of like that message from Sonic. Very appropriate from his character. But the way that they're framing this is just too, I don't know about this, Chief. I mean, how Sonic has taken a lot of inspiration from Star Wars in many instances? This game, and particularly this romance, I see a lot of prequel Star Wars in it. Does anyone else get, a weird Anakin, Padme rolling around in the grass vibe from this? Because it's very along those lines of, if you just play the pretty music and you have the characters smiling and laughing in a pretty environment, then that means they're falling in love, right? Not the best, in my opinion. I mean, so far, it's not terrible. The romance could work from here if we manage to make future scenes work out. Unfortunately, they don't. Now is where we run into that new character, Silver the Hedgehog, and he is out for Sonic, as it turns out. He says something about wanting to save the future, yada yada, and how he has to kill the Iblis trigger, and obviously Sonic has no idea what the hell this guy is talking about, but he's trying to kill Sonic, so obviously he has to defend himself. And in the chaos of that, Eggman sneaks up again and manages to kidnap Elise once more. And this is where we have to talk about the repeated Elise kidnappings in this game, because it happens over and over and over and over in this story of Elise managing to escape from Eggman and then him capturing her again. And I think I understand why the story is done like this for Sonic's campaign, because the issue is Elise is a normal human being with no special abilities or powers or anything like that, and so for gameplay purposes, you can't really have Elise and Sonic together the entire story. There are a couple of levels when Sonic is carrying Elise where Sonic has slightly different gameplay, but that's obviously just supposed to be an alternative type of gameplay that you have every now and then. That's not supposed to be the standard Sonic gameplay in this game. They want you to be able to have just typical Sonic running and platforming gameplay. But obviously there's no way Sonic can be running through these environments super fast and have Elise with him, so they have to, by nature of the game, separate Sonic and Elise for a large portion of the story in order to have normal Sonic gameplay in here. But at the same time, they also need to forward the story of Sonic and Elise and their relationship growing, and so you get this awkward, they're together, they're not, they're together, they're not, back and forth over and over. And it really causes problems with the pacing, and that's where you get that issue of Sonic's story constantly being about him saving Elise. This is an instance where the fact that this is a game is actually conflicting with the goals of the story, because clearly they want Sonic to have this relationship with a normal human girl, but that in itself is contradicting with what the game is also trying to do, and so it results in quite a problem. And speaking of problems, another issue that comes up in this scene is that once again, this story is told in the Sonic Adventure style of multiple different stories happening at the same time where we follow a specific character. And that results in having to watch scenes we've already seen again, and random story elements that have nothing to do with this story just appearing and then disappearing for no reason, because Silver is about to attack Sonic and kill him, and then out of nowhere, Amy just shows up and she stands in front of Silver and is like, no, I'm not gonna let you hurt him. And then Sonic is able to make his escape. And it's like, okay, I guess Amy's in this story now. What the fuck just happened? Where did that come from? What was the point of that? I don't know. Shut up, it's in Silver's story. Moving on. So in the next scene, Sonic and Tails run into Knuckles, which, by the way, when did Sonic and Tails meet back up? They split up before, when Tails was going to go distract the robot so Sonic could get away with Elise. But Tails is just here now, so whatever. And of course, Knuckles is not guarding the Master Emerald on Angel Island, but honestly, at this point, that part of his character has basically been completely erased, so whatever, I don't even give a shit anymore. Though it is worth noting that I said that Tails is useless in this game's story, but Knuckles is even more so. Like, this isn't like an SA2. He has his own story that kind of is forced into the main story. No, in this case, Knuckles literally does absolutely nothing and could just not be in this story and it would change literally nothing. Knuckles has a message from Eggman stating for Sonic to bring the Chaos Emerald to him if he wants to get the princess back. Which, of course, it's obviously a trap, but Sonic is gonna go anyway. Which, this is a very weird plot point to me because it is so extremely similar to something that was done in Sonic Adventure 2 already, when Eggman had Amy held captive and asked Sonic to give him the Chaos Emerald there. Not necessarily a fault with this game's plotting, it's just weird that we would have, like, almost the exact same setup happen in another Sonic story like this. Almost smacks of a bit of a lack of creativity or something like that, I don't know. Because literally, just like in Sonic Adventure 2, Eggman says, put the emerald there, and they put it there, and then, oh, you're trapped, and then Eggman does a thing, and it's like, aha, I got you. Like, it's obviously not doing the fake emerald thing or whatever, but generally, this scene is very, very similar. And Eggman's machine takes Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles and sends them somewhere. And Elise is all worried about them, but Eggman's like, don't worry, they're not dead. This machine just sent them somewhere through time. Eggman explains for no reason that this machine of his is able to control time, but it's not entirely complete yet. For it to be fully complete, he's going to need the power of the Flames of Disaster sealed inside Elise, apparently, and the 7 Chaos Emeralds. And once he has all of that, he'll be able to control all of time. Which is kind of weird in my opinion, because this is the same setup as what Sonic CD was doing with the Time Stones. Weird to be revisiting this whole idea of Eggman trying to control time, but now through a different method? Like, it's very odd that there's 2 ways to control time in the Sonic universe. It almost kind of feels like, did the Sonic CD stuff even happen? Is that canon to this story? I don't fucking know. It's a big fucking mess. Don't ask me. Also, another thing about this scene is, like, holy shit, is Elise useless. Like, obviously she's just a young girl, so she can't do much, but she literally just stands there and watches Eggman, like, flip the switch and just do whatever the fuck he wants. She's not, like, restrained or has cuffs on or anything. Like, I don't know, try to fucking punch him in the back of the head, do something. It does not make her a very likable character when she is, like, the poster child for useless damsel in distress character. Now, cutting back to Sonic and friends, they appear through Eggman's machine in some other time, and this is something that's going to be reoccurring throughout this game's story. They extremely conveniently immediately run into Shadow and Rouge, who just so happen to also be at this same point in time. They learn from these two that they have been sent into the far future where the world is destroyed, and them running into Shadow and Rouge here and them being in the same time in the far future is like, okay, that's kind of convenient, but I'm fine with that. But do they literally have to meet them the very second they come out of the portal? How about they search around the ruined city first, going, what happened, where are we? And then they run into Shadow and Rouge and get the lowdown, huh? Anyway, it's not too hard to figure out that this giant flaming city is the result of the Flames of Disaster, so at some point they get released and create this ruined future. And of course, our heroes want to get back to the present. And Shadow explains that in order to do that, they're going to need a large amount of power capable of bending space and time, obviously meaning chaos control. But Shadow says that he's not going to be able to do it by himself, so they're going to need both Sonic and Shadow's ability to chaos control combined together in order to achieve the feat, so they're going to need to find 2 Chaos Emeralds somewhere. So the 2 groups split up, and Sonic and friends go after a Chaos Emerald reading, where they run into quite an interesting scene.
本当にそいつを殺せばこの世界が救われるんだな。
最悪の日、イブリースの封印が解かれ、炎が世界に放たれた日の記録がここに収められている。そしてそのトリガーの姿がここに。
見えた。こ
この青いハリネズミがイブリーストリガー。
青いハリネズミ。
僕が送ってあげよう。イブリーストリガーの生きる時代へ。
I did criticize Sonic Adventure for its, like, doing the multiple different stories and interweaving them together because of all, like, the pointless stuff that happens in one story that's not relevant to it. But actually, I would argue that Sonic 06 kind of does that better than Sonic Adventure did, because most of the time when the stories do cross over, it actually is in a way that is relevant, and the scenes that we see generally are explained and understood for the most part within the singular story. And they usually do serve an actual purpose. Like right now, Sonic's story is intertwining with Shadow's, but in a way where it kind of works out. Shadow and Rouge were there to explain to Sonic what's going on, and also help them formulate a plan of how to get out of this ruined future. And of course, Silver has been gunning for Sonic this entire time, and now we kind of get to see a little bit of the reason why. He's been made to believe by this mystery character that looks like Shadow that Sonic is the one that caused this ruined future. And then Sonic and friends go up to this computer terminal that they were looking at and look at the news from what happened long ago and how this future happened. And they find out that Elise ends up dying when she's being held captive by Eggman, which just one small thing, not a big deal here, but how the fuck is this computer working? Like, how do they have electricity whatsoever in this, like, nightmare world? Whatever, not that big of a deal. Though another weird thing about this scene is that Sonic is all, like, anxious and, like, worked up. He's like, we gotta hurry and save Elise before that happens. It's like, bro, it's time travel. You're in no rush whatsoever. You could go back to whatever point in time at any point in time. It's fine. However, we're gonna find out as this story goes on more and more that they do not understand how time travel works whatso-fucking-ever in this writing. Anyway, Sonic and friends meet back up with Shadow and Rouge, who they have already found a Chaos Emerald, so now they just need one more. And they very quickly find it after fighting a giant flame worm monster thing for no reason. And then using these two Chaos Emeralds, Sonic and Shadow are able to both do Chaos Control, creating enough power for them to be able to open a portal through time, which causes a colossal amount of problems with just the lore of the Sonic series, because holy shit, this now establishes that just with two Chaos Emeralds, you can travel through time, and this basically just breaks the entire story of the game and the story of basically every single Sonic game before and after this. Just everything becomes completely broken, and it's all just hinging on the logic of the characters not functioning, where they never think about how they can use the time travel to their benefit. I mean, people will always give time travel stories a bit of a pass, you know, if you really think about it, it doesn't make sense, but, you know, it's time travel. But personally, I do not think that is an excuse whatsoever. It's perfectly possible to tell a time travel story where all of the time travel makes sense and is consistent. It's just bad writing that results in these sloppy time travel stories. I'm okay with, like, sillier stories that don't really take themselves too seriously. Okay, fine, whatever. But this game is clearly, like, trying to have, like, stakes and real moments and stuff, and it wants you to take the threat of Elise dying seriously. But with the power of time travel, you can just make this completely null and void and not matter whatsoever. But honestly, it's such a fucking mess that I'm not even going to talk about it that much. You can easily figure out for yourself all of the ways the time travel just breaks the stories in these games. But the real major issue is that it breaks this game's own story in so many ways, and I'll explain that as we go further. So, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles managed to get back to the present. Shadow and Rouge aren't there, so I guess they were sent somewhere else or something. Ooh, actually successfully creating intrigue in what's going on in the other characters' stories. Sonic Adventure attempted things like this, but I really don't think it worked well at all. This game actually does have me wondering what happened to Shadow and Rouge, because at the very end of that last scene, Shadow turned around and looked at something. Ooh, what's going on? it's not just random things happening for no reason in this story. It's like we're actually alluding to other things happening in Shadow's story. I mean, why was he in the future to begin with? You're left to actually wonder that, rather than characters just appearing in the story for no reason and then going away, like Amy did earlier. Amy's the one instance where it's really not very good and done like how it was in Sonic Adventure, but for the most part, all the other intertwining story stuff generally works in this game. So anyway, back to the story. Where were we? Oh yeah, Elise was captured by Eggman and Sonic goes to save her. Right, I forgot. I mean, basically, we're always at that point in this story, at any given moment. And then almost like clockwork, Sonic manages to save Elise, but guess who shows up? It's Silver trying to kill Sonic again. And then, oh look, Eggman kidnaps Elise again. And right when it looks like Silver is about to take out Sonic, boom, Shadow the Hedgehog shows up. Hell yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about. We actually have this set up where we've already met Shadow at this point in the story. We know he's up to something, but we're not entirely sure what. He was sent back to the present, presumably, but in a different place, doing a different thing. We don't exactly know what's going on with Shadow, but here he is back again to help back up Sonic, which actually, that's something I want to touch on a little bit in this game. Sonic and Shadow's relationship, I quite like how they interact in this game, because, you know, obviously SA2, that was a whole different thing. With Sonic Heroes, Sonic and Shadow didn't really talk very much, and Shadow the Hedgehog was, you know, kind of messy with all the weird non-canon stuff going on there. So this is the first time in a while where we get to see Sonic and Shadow just talk to each other, and I really like their relationship, how they have kind of like a mutual respect but kind of friendly rivalry with one another.
いいぜシャドウ。ここは一つ共同戦線と行こう。遅れるなよ。貴様こそ。
It works very well, and of course, in this kind of moment, when stuff gets serious, Shadow is there to back up Sonic. You know, he's not really involved in what Sonic is doing, he's got his own thing going on, but he sees Sonic in danger, and he's willing to help out just because. Oh yeah, another thing about this scene, where are Tails and Knuckles? They were tagging along with Sonic, remember that? And now they're just gone. This is a very common thing that you'll see in Sonic 06's cutscenes, is characters just appearing and disappearing randomly, just based on whatever cutscene we're watching. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. I guess they couldn't afford to animate them in all the cutscenes or something? I have no fucking clue. Now, catching up with Elise and Eggman, Elise is like, I won't let you hold me. And Eggman's like, sure, what are you gonna do, jump? And then she actually fucking does, surprisingly. Of course, Sonic is there to save her, but, like, she was just straight up about to fucking kill herself there. Like, my god. You think you're taking it a little far there, Elise? Jesus Christ, she didn't even know Sonic was gonna be there to save her. And after they get away from Eggman, Sonic is like, whoa, that was a crazy move you pulled back there. And she's like, well, you know, I had to get away. And, like, I see what they're trying to do here. Like, she's inspired by Sonic to try to do something bold instead of just standing there and doing nothing like she was before. They're trying to get across the idea that meeting Sonic has caused Elise to start changing a little bit, but, I mean, it's not like that was like a clever move to get away from Eggman that was just, she was just about to kill herself. And she's like, it's all thanks to you, Sonic, and again, he's like kind of embarrassed and shy like an anime protag would be. It's still not working very well. And then Eggman's robots start to pursue them again, and they get away again, and then we get another fancy CG scene of another romantic moment between Sonic and Elise, where Sonic takes Elise to this beautiful lake with all these flowers, and oh, it's so wonderful.
ソニックはいつもこんな風にいろんな世界を見ているの？
あ
あの人を倒したらこの国を出て行ってしまうのね。怖い思いもしたけど、私本当はちょっと楽しかった。それ穴の王女じゃなくて、一人の女の子として過ごせたのは初めてだったから。
Okay, I'm sorry, what now? Okay, like, alright, she's been having fun because Sonic has been running through all the places with her, you know, so she's experiencing all this excitement and adventure. Okay, I'm fine with that part. But the part where she's like, oh, I didn't feel like a princess, I got to just be a girl. What the fuck does that mean? The only things that she's been doing throughout this entire story is getting kidnapped and getting saved and being attacked by Eggman's robots. Is that things that normal girls go through? Oh, you know, it's just girl stuff. I've been saved multiple times by a cartoon blue hedgehog from a fat man and his robot army. You know, typical girl stuff. What the fuck is she talking about right now? This is such horseshit. And then Sonic is talking about, like, oh, being a princess must be pretty tough. And she's like, yeah, but I like being a princess, you know, my responsibility to the people. I love this country, and yada yada, all that. And again, I see what they're going for. Like, Elise has spent her whole life as a princess, you know, a monarchy, being in charge of this country, all this responsibility, and now going on this adventure with Sonic. It's a new experience for her. It's the free life that Sonic lives of adventure and excitement and all this stuff, and it's making Elise realize something new about herself and seeing what this kind of life is like. And that's where her feelings for Sonic are starting to come from. I get it. The problem is that Elise has the personality of a piece of cardboard, so you don't actually give a shit. We don't spend nearly enough time with her for this arc to really feel like anything, and we don't know enough about her personality and her character to feel the sharp contrast between her normal princess duties and all this excitement and adventure. It's just not working, dude. They even throw in a thing about how, like, Elise's father was like, you need to become a strong queen, so don't cry no matter what. You have to protect the country, and it's just, no. This is way too fucking melodramatic and stupid. And then, of course, she's all like, oh, Sonic, when you leave, you'll remember this place, won't you? And he's like, yeah, of course I will. And then she's all, oh, my man, he's gonna leave. I'm never gonna see him again. And she's like, no, can't cry. It's like, Jesus, fucking so stupid. Subtlety is really not in this game's cinematic vocabulary. My God. And then you know what's really fucking stupid? So, okay, Sonic managed to save Elise, get her away from Eggman and all that. And now he's like, I'm gonna bring you back to the castle where you'll be safe. And so he does that, and then the very next fucking scene is Eggman flies all over Soliana and is like, hey, Princess Elise, if you don't surrender yourself to me right now, I'm just gonna start blasting Soliana indiscriminately. And it's just like, so Sonic was like, okay, Eggman is after you, you go to the castle, and then I'm not gonna do anything about Eggman whatsoever. I'm just gonna leave him. Like, shouldn't Sonic have, like, left her there and then gone after Eggman to defeat him once and for all and, you know, end this whole thing? Obviously, Eggman has been after Elise this whole time. Why wouldn't he continue to be after her? This is so fucking stupid. And also, Eggman is like, I'm gonna attack if you don't show up by 4 p.m., so make sure you're there. I mean, I guess we don't really know what time it is, so we don't know how much time she has. But couldn't they, like, evacuate the city or something instead of her just turning herself into Eggman? Maybe not. I don't know, because we don't know how much time she has. But that's what she does. She gives herself up to Eggman because she gets captured by Eggman constantly in this story, because that's how it has to be. And so, of course, Sonic goes to save Elise again, but this time he runs into Silver once more, who is actually not trying to kill Sonic this time. He's actually going to try to help save Elise, because something's going on with Silver's story also. We don't exactly know why, but clearly things have changed. Once again, I think this is better done than what was in Sonic Adventure, because there's a clear moment here of like, oh, Silver's actually here to help this time. Something's going on, but we don't know what. Go check out the Silver campaign if you want to see what's happening. So, Sonic and Silver chase after the egg carrier, but, for no apparent reason, the egg carrier just explodes and crashes, and there is never an explanation of any kind whatsoever why this happens. It just explodes for no reason. And then Sonic has a weirdly extreme reaction to Elise dying. This is another one of those things where Sonic's behavior is a little bit forced. I mean, yeah, he'll be upset that, you know, he let somebody die, but, I mean, he's, like, really worked up over this girl that he met one day ago. Like, we understand why Elise has feelings for Sonic, but there's really never any reason whatsoever why Sonic starts to develop feelings for her if he even has feelings for her, it's very unclear, but he definitely acts very odd around her in ways that he doesn't other characters. I fucking don't know, dude. It's a giant fucking mess. Don't ask me. However, Silver suggests that, hey, it's not over yet because we can use time travel to go back in time and save Elise. So Sonic and Silver both use their Chaos Emeralds to Chaos Control, create a portal, and then Sonic jumps through to go back in time. For some reason, he apparently knows that Silver has something else going on, so he gives Silver his Chaos Emeralds, like, you go take care of whatever you're doing, I guess. Oh yeah, and Blaze is here, by the way. No mention of that. She's just in this cutscene all of a sudden when she wasn't in the one before. Whatever. However, that is far from the biggest problem that this cutscene has, because Sonic's Chaos Emerald that he uses to Chaos Control here, that is the one that he got from the future when he and Shadow traveled back. So he's had that Chaos Emerald this entire time, which means at the moment there are 8 Chaos Emeralds in existence. Not necessarily a problem per se, but that is extremely weird, isn't it? And this is actually something that's going to come up a couple of times. Pay attention to how many Chaos Emeralds exist at any given moment. It's very odd. Anyway, Sonic gets sent back in time, conveniently just before the egg carrier is about to launch with Elise inside of it. I guess they never specifically state if you can super precisely choose what destination and what time you want to go to, so I'll give it a pass in this situation, but this does become problematic in other scenes. So Sonic chases after Eggman, and another weird thing about characters appearing and disappearing, Sonic is, like, doing this on his own, presumably, because he came back in time and now he's assaulting Eggman's base. But in the actual level, Tails and Knuckles are just here helping him for no reason whatsoever, and then once you get back to the cutscenes, they're gone again. Figure it out for yourself. But anyway, Sonic manages to get aboard the egg carrier, get to Elise, defeat Eggman, and rescue her while the egg carrier is crashing. You get this really nice CG animated action scene that's super cool, and we have this moment with Elise.
Sonic!
怖くないのかい？
悩む暇があったら走るでしょ?
Ah, see? Look at that callback. Look at how much Elise has changed. This character arc totally works, and their romance totally makes sense. Yeah, no, sorry, Sonic 06. Not that easy. This moment would be really good if Elise was a better established character that we understood more and actually liked to some capacity, and if their relationship building was done in a more solid way. But as it is, it just does not come together the way they wanted it to. All of the pieces are there, kind of, but they're just not strong enough to make this story really work. It thinks it's working, it's trying to work, but it's just not coming together. Like, after Sonic and Elise have gotten away from danger, then they start doing the anime thing where they're just laughing. Sonic comments on Elise's smile again. You know, before she was all worried and sad and he was telling her to smile. And now that she's kind of adopted Sonic's mentality of being more free-spirited, she's enjoying and laughing at the danger that they were just in. And so he's telling her, nice smile, you know, that's what I like to see. Don't worry about things, just enjoy life. And then they do like a sex wink at each other, and it's just like, no, this is not working the way you want it to be working. I'm sorry. Elise is just a crappy character, and it just does not come together. However, I do want to say that I don't think this story is irredeemable. I think that with a lot of tweaking, the idea of Sonic being in a romantic relationship of this kind actually could work, even with a normal human girl. The real problem is that because Elise is human, she can't do any action video game stuff, and so she can't show up during the majority of the gameplay, which means we have to keep separating Sonic and Elise, preventing her character from properly getting fleshed out. They clearly very much wanted to have her be human, but honestly, considering that the way the game is, I think it would have been better not to do that for this story. You know, sometimes you just have to make sacrifices and compromises to make things work out better. So here's just an idea of what I would have done differently to make this story kind of work better. Granted, you know, this game's development was a mess and they couldn't make massive changes like this. I'm just spitballing ideas for the story itself, you know, in a more idealized world where things could have been done differently. I say remove Tails and Knuckles completely from the story because they are 100% pointless, and instead change Elise from a human into an animal character, and make her playable so that way throughout Sonic's campaign you're switching between playing as Sonic and playing as Elise. By doing this, we don't have to constantly separate Sonic and Elise throughout the story so you can have traditional Sonic gameplay. It also helps that the romance becomes less weird because Elise is no longer a human, but also this gives us a lot of extra time to really develop and flesh out Elise's character. Like, with the arc that they try to go for, there's definitely stuff there that could work. Like, you have Elise, and she's very devoted to her duty as princess and looking over the kingdom, the responsibilities, all that. And she's led a very uptight, very regimented, very safe life, where she's always been busy with all this pressure and stuff like that. Then Eggman comes to capture her, and Sonic saves her, and then the two of them are on the run from Eggman throughout the entirety of the story. And through that process, she begins to feel the life of Sonic, of someone that is free and running around and doing whatever, and by spending time with him, she gets to understand him as a person and gets inspired by him, kind of starting to lead to her romantic development. In fact, you could even go a little bit further and give Sonic a bit of a character arc too, where you could have him have the opposite arc, where he's always living very free, just doing whatever he wants. But of course, in real life, that doesn't really work because everyone has responsibilities that they need to take care of, and so Elise could serve to teach Sonic the lesson of sometimes you can't just do what you'd like to do, sometimes there are things you have to do. You have to be held accountable for your actions, and you have to take responsibility. Sonic could learn that from Elise, just like she could learn the opposite from him, and they both end up on a bit more of a middle ground where they connect that way, and then I would find the romance a little bit more believable. And as far as personality goes, you can have Elise be a little bit more of an uptight character, where she actually, like, criticizes Sonic for being so careless all the time, while still kind of opening her mind later in the story to seeing what Sonic is like, and then he realizes that, to a degree, she was right when she's criticizing him. You know, then you actually have them bouncing off of each other in a way where there's actually a dynamic there. And really, at that point, Elise basically becomes an entirely different character, so what if we renamed her to something else? Just, you know, randomly a name that came to my head is like Sally, you know, what if we called her that instead? And then, I think this whole story would work a little bit better, don't you think? As it is with the final product, I see what they're trying to do, but it really just does not work. On to Silver's story, and the first thing that I have to say is Silver the Hedgehog is a terrible character. A lot of people say that Sonic has the worst story of the three in this game, but personally, I do not agree with that at all. I think Silver's story is definitely the worst, for a number of reasons. But first, we obviously need to talk about Trunks. You know, Trunks from Dragon Ball Z, specifically the one from the future, from the Cell Saga. You know that Trunks? So Silver's just Trunks. He's just the same character, basically almost identical. He was born and raised and lives in this fucked up future world where it's constantly being harassed by this evil monster thing, and he fights futilely to try to save the world, but he really can't. And then he tries to use time travel to go back and prevent this future from even happening. It is just Trunks, admittedly so by the creators of the game, which, you know, I guess whatever, everything's based on something, but did you have to be that blatant in copying Trunks' character? I mean, I know Sonic takes a lot of things from DBZ, but come on, dude. And another thing I want to touch on is the future scenario that we have here in Sonic 06 is extremely vague. There's so many things we don't know about what Silver's life is like in this world. Like, is the entire world like a fire nightmare apocalypse, or is this just Soliana that's like this? We're not really sure, we don't really know. Silver at the beginning also mentions that, like, the people live in terror, and I'm like, what people? Where are the people? We never see anyone. The only two people we ever see living in this world is Silver and Blaze. We never see humans or civilians or people just trying to survive and get by. I mean, just looking at this world, how could anyone fucking live? Like, where's the food? Where's the water? It's very hard for me to buy this whole setup here when they don't actually give us the things we need to understand what living in this world is like. They have this prologue with Silver narrating to give you the rundown of what's going on here, but he's just flying through flaming ruins. To make this work more effectively, I think they should have had Silver walking through, like, a camp of people, you know, trying to survive, you know, in destroyed buildings and scrounging together what food they can and just trying to make it. And then, you know, his monologue of the people just barely managed to get by, you know, that would work a little bit better. Here, Silver tells us that people are struggling to survive, but there's no evidence of anything even remotely close to that. As far as we're actually shown in the game, this is an entire world made of lava and fire creatures. So that could have been done quite a bit better, in my opinion, but, you know, Sonic 06, unfinished, blah blah blah. So the basic setup here is that Silver and Blaze are two people that fight the monster Iblis, and Iblis is basically the cause of all of this destruction. He's the giant fire demon that all of this comes from. And every so often he appears and does some damage, and people fight him back, but ultimately he ends up just reviving anyway, and so there's no actually defeating Iblis, there is no saving the world. All you can do is buy some time until his next appearance. Oh yeah, I guess now would probably be a good time to mention Silver and Blaze and who they are. I mean, they're kind of just people that live in this ruined future. We don't really get much in terms of them as characters and what their lives are like. But, you know, Silver has his telekinesis or whatever, and this is his introduction, so there's really not much more than that to him. And Blaze is a whole situation that I'm not gonna get into right now. I'll talk about that when I start talking about Sonic Rush. For this game's story, all you need to know is that Blaze is some cat girl that has fire powers. So these two repeatedly fight Iblis, and Silver is very frustrated because he's like, what's the point of all this? This isn't actually doing anything. We're never going to be free from Iblis's tyranny. There's gotta be something we can do to finally defeat Iblis once and for all. And that is when, conveniently, we are introduced to not Shadow the Hedgehog. And this mysterious character basically tells Silver and Blaze that if you want to save the world from Iblis, then you have to stop Iblis from coming to be in the first place. And this is where we get that scene that we saw in the Sonic campaign of this character making Silver believe that Sonic is the one that's responsible for releasing Iblis and causing this future to happen. Thus, Silver wants to kill Sonic when this character sends him and Blaze back into the present. However, I have a couple of issues with this whole setup here. Mainly that Silver just goes along with this incredibly shady-looking dude and just believes what he says on the spot with no evidence to back up what he's saying. Like, okay, I understand Silver's mentality and his type of character. He's very desperate, you know, the situation he's in has led him to want any kind of solution to this problem, and so when someone presents a potential solution, he's immediately going to jump on that as his chance to finally fix things. But, like, he doesn't even ask the most basic of questions, like, who are you? How do you know all this stuff? If you're able to time travel, then why haven't you already prevented this present from happening? And why are you specifically asking us to do this instead of doing it yourself? There are so many basic logical questions that any rational person would be asking in this situation, and Silver just doesn't. And like, okay, whatever. Silver is supposed to be naive and blinded by his desire to end all the suffering, so he just goes along with it. But what about Blaze? She is depicted as the more rational and level-headed of the two, but she just sits there and doesn't say anything and also goes along with what this guy is saying. She's a little bit more skeptical about it, but she still doesn't actually pose any questions or ask for an explanation behind any of this. There is making characters naive and having them get fooled, and then there is characters just being fucking idiots, and that is what this situation here is. And another issue I have with this whole setup here is Isn't this basically the exact same thing that we did in Sonic 3 with Knuckles? It's the exact same thing, really. We have a new character that is a good person, but they end up getting tricked by someone into thinking that Sonic is a bad guy, and they try to attack him, and then they ultimately realize they were in the wrong, and they team up with Sonic to help save the day. Why are we just rehashing storylines so much in this game? It's very, very weird, and, there's a lot of references to past games in this game, kind of trying to redo things. The egg carrier straight up from Sonic Adventure, but we don't really reference it as like, oh, Eggman's built a new egg carrier. We just don't talk about it. And Iblis himself is, in my opinion, very similar to Chaos from Sonic Adventure as well. A giant monster made of an element that destroys an entire world, and we have this imagery of a city flooded with water, and now we have a fire monster instead with very similar stuff going on. I don't really know why they wanted this game to be a giant rehash of things that have already happened in the Sonic series before, but I find it very odd and questionable. So, back to the story, Silver is sent back in time, though he ends up getting separated from Blaze, and of course he is after this Iblis trigger, who is Sonic the Hedgehog. And after some searching around, he eventually manages to find him, and this is where we see him in the original opening cutscene from Sonic's perspective. Now we see Silver watching Sonic from afar, but then Amy comes in with her classic, mistaking another hedgehog for Sonic, and then, oh, sorry, you're not the person I was looking for, yada yada, all that stuff. And I don't really think that they're trying to do the thing with Shadow in SA2 where Silver is supposed to look like Sonic, really. I think at this point this is just supposed to be a running gag of Amy mistaking any hedgehog she sees with Sonic, which I think is fine, that's kind of funny. Though, when you think about it, the logic of Amy being here is kind of weird, because first of all, they're on, a rooftop of some building, which, why is Amy on a rooftop? I don't really understand that. But also, the scene here happens literally seconds after a big Eggman attack with a bunch of explosions and missiles and, endangering civilians and a whole bunch of stuff. And then Amy is just, casually talking with Silver like it's just an average, everyday conversation. Very weird, we don't actually see the Eggman attack when we're watching the story from Silver's perspective, so I guess we're just not supposed to think about that kind of stuff. But I'm thinking about it, and when I think about it, I find this a very bizarre scenario. In a more realistic presentation of this scene, Amy should be casually talking with Silver about trying to find Sonic as there's fire and smoke in the background and people screaming for help. But anyway, so Amy mistakes Silver for Sonic and is like, oh, sorry about that. And then she realizes that, oh, Silver is looking for someone as well. Because obviously Amy is looking for Sonic, because that's what she does. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I made you lose the person you were looking for. I'm gonna help you find them. And, there's supposed to be a little bit of dramatic irony here. They're both looking for the same person, but for very different reasons. Oh, isn't that funny? Whatever, sure. So Amy ends up dragging Silver around for a while, trying to look for Sonic. They never actually communicate that they're looking for the same person, so, misunderstandings. And this is one moment where we get a little bit of character out of Silver, and that he's a bit socially awkward and doesn't really know how to handle this kind of situation, which I think is very appropriate considering the world that he comes from and the life that he's lived. He doesn't really understand such a upbeat and happy girl like Amy and her bright attitude, so he doesn't really know how to behave around her, and so he just ends up going along with her just because he's awkward and confused and doesn't really know what to do in this kind of situation. This is one of the few instances of actual personality we get out of Silver in his entire story. And while him and Amy are looking around for Sonic, he ends up thinking about just how beautiful the world is in this time. He's never seen a blue sky and, all this vegetation and greenery and all this beauty in the world. All the people are happy and no one's afraid of being killed by fire demons every second. Even this desert to him seems like a wonderful place. A nice little moment for Silver, kind of giving him real fuel to his motivation in that, the world that he's always known has been hell, and this is a chance of, if he succeeds in what he's trying to do, he can live in a world like this too. I don't think this moment is fully realized very well because it kind of ends up getting cut short, but the idea here is nice. So after some more searching, eventually Silver does manage to find Sonic, and this is where he runs into Sonic the first time, they fight, yada yada, and when he's about to defeat Sonic, that's when Amy comes in and stops him, and now we get to see what happens once Sonic makes his getaway, where Amy is like, "You were about to kill Sonic? Well, I didn't know that was what was going on at all. That's not cool, dude, what the hell?" And he's like, he's gonna ruin the world and all that, and Amy's like, "Obviously that's a bunch of bullshit. Sonic would never do something like that. He's super cool." And this is a nice moment for Amy's character, partially, but there are problems, which we'll talk about. But one thing about this scene that I find odd is that Silver is so dead set on this idea that he has to kill Sonic to save the future because Sonic is gonna destroy the world. But the only reason he thinks that is because the guy that looks like Shadow told him such, with no evidence to back that up whatsoever. And now we have Amy saying that Sonic would never do something like that, and Sonic is a good person. Again, with no evidence to back that up whatsoever. It's just her word. But for some reason, Silver doesn't believe her while he does believe the other guy. I know he offered Silver a solution to his problem, and so Silver is more inclined to want to believe that, but still, again, this kind of just makes Silver seem like an idiot. Granted, this is the moment where Silver is supposed to start questioning what the other guy was telling him, but in my opinion, he should be doing a lot more than that at this point. Now, as for Amy in this scene, this is where we talk about how one of the writers of this game was someone who wrote for Sonic X, because the way that Amy is written is very similar to how she is written in Sonic X. And in Sonic X, Amy's characterization is not exactly the best. Amy is basically obsessed with Sonic and is always talking about Sonic, her love for him, her feelings for him, and she is just like super duper ultra girly all the time. She's talking about fashion and shopping and wanting to be pretty, and basically everything goes back to her wanting to impress Sonic and get his favor and all that kind of stuff. And that's really not everyone's favorite version of Amy, and I certainly don't like it either. Like, yeah, Amy has her feelings for Sonic, but, back in Sonic Heroes, she was very independent and was doing her own things and had her own confidence and strength. And this basically reverts all of that stuff to, like, pre-Sonic CD levels, where she's even more Sonic obsessed than she was there. I mean, listen to the line that she has here.
もしもそんなことになったって世界とソニックのどっちかなら私はソニックを選ぶ
Like, holy fuck, girl, I know that you like him and all, but that's a little bit extreme, don't you think? This isn't the worst example of how Amy is written in the games, but it's certainly not great. So, after the confrontation with Amy, this leaves Silver to contemplate what he's been thinking this whole time, about killing Sonic, killing the Iblis trigger to save the future. This is where he reunites with Blaze, and he asks her, like, is what we're doing the right thing? Is it right to kill a person to save the world for the greater good and all that? And Blaze basically says that, I don't really know if it's the right thing to do, but if we do nothing, then nothing is gonna change. And so Silver is like, yeah, I guess you're right, so I guess it's back to going after Sonic. He's going after Eggman right now, so let's hit up his base and meet him there. And excuse me, hold on a second, what? How does Silver know who Eggman is? This is one of those things where the writers weren't paying attention to the information that the characters are supposed to have in the scene. Silver has not encountered or met Eggman in any way whatsoever at all in the story so far, yet he somehow knows who Eggman is. When Silver was confronting Sonic, all that happens is some claws grabbed Elise and flew away, and Silver wasn't even paying attention to that. All he cared about was trying to kill Sonic. Yet somehow he suddenly knows who Dr. Eggman is and is like, let's go to his base. Sloppy writing there, or a cutscene, one or the other, I don't know. And while at Eggman's base, Silver and Blaze come across a Chaos Emerald, and somehow Blaze knows what the hell a Chaos Emerald is, and explains it to Silver, and tells him to keep it as a good luck charm. And note, this is the blue Chaos Emerald, which is the one that Elise initially had that she gave to Sonic, and then Sonic gave to Eggman and his machine to control time or whatever. So then I guess Eggman took that and shoved it in this giant robot thing to power it for some reason, I guess? Don't think about it too much. Now, in the meantime, we cut to a relatively pointless aside, but I want to talk about it anyway, where Amy has also snuck into Eggman's base because she's chasing after Sonic, as she does. And she runs into Princess Elise, who is also trying to escape from Eggman's base. And Elise and Amy manage to escape together. And I just find this a very odd thing, that, like, Amy is escorting Elise out of Eggman's base. Like, yeah, Amy will protect Elise. No one to take care of a poor defenseless girl like a poor defenseless girl. Like, the way Amy is treated in this game, she's sneaking around Eggman's base, kind of similar to how she was in, like, SA2 with, like, the gun prison or whatever. So by this metric, I assume that Amy is back to being a relatively weak character again, and not, you know, a strong fighter type like she was in Sonic Heroes. This is the thing that really annoys me with the fucking characters in this series, is they just go back and forth about what they want these characters to be. It's so inconsistent. If you want to have Amy grow and become a stronger character that's able to fight and do stuff, sure, whatever, but at least be consistent with it. But this game kind of just rewinds a bunch of that, and nope, Amy's back to having to sneak around from the big scary Eggman robots. Really, the only reason this is here is so Amy and Elise can have this conversation, and this is the perfect example of what I was talking about with the Sonic X style of Amy writing, where she's just talking about love and boys and all that stuff. Just listen to this conversation.
エリスってまさかソレアナ公国のお姫様？誰かが助けに来るのを待てばよかったのに。ええ、でもそんなことではダメだって。待っているだけでは何も変わらない。そう教えてくださった方がいて。ははあなたその人のこと好きなんでしょう。え？いや、いいの私はそういう恋をすると女の子はみんな変わるの。世界がね、とっても大きくなるの。でしょ？ねえねえ、どんな人なの？もう付き合ったりしてるの？いえ、とてもそんな。片思い？うわ、だったら私断然応援するよ。エリスはお姫様なんだし、超可愛いから絶対うまくいくって。私も実は追っかけてる人がいるの。お互い頑張りましょう。
Yeah, going a little hard on, like, the super cutesy girly Amy thing, in my opinion. Like, you look at how she was written in Sonic Heroes, and this is not really the same. And I also find it weird that twice in this story, Amy's doing the thing where she's talking with someone about Sonic, but they don't know that they're both talking about Sonic, and so there's this, like, misunderstanding there of, like, the dramatic irony of we know they're both talking about the same person. Why did they decide to do that twice with Amy in the same situation? It's weird, I don't understand. But, hey, you know what? Elise managed to escape from Eggman's base, and she goes back to her castle, where Eggman immediately captures her again, because I guess there weren't enough Elise kidnappings in the Sonic campaign, so we had to throw in an extra bonus one here in the Silver campaign, because there really wasn't enough of this happening, because, you know, Sonic was stuck in the future at this point, so that would have left Elise not escaping from Eggman and getting captured for a good chunk of the story. We can't possibly have that now, can we? So really, this entire situation with Amy and Elise is completely pointless. Maybe this is supposed to be the part that Elise was talking about, if she got to be a girl by having, like, a girl talk with Amy about boys? But it's quite a stretch, and it doesn't even happen in the Sonic campaign, so we don't even see this in the story where she would be referring to this scene, if that's even what this is supposed to be. Basically, this is a load of crap. Now, cutting back to Silver and Blaze, Silver has finally developed a brain, and he goes up to Mephiles, which, by the way, I just find it weird that Mephiles is just standing around. Oh, and yeah, by the way, the character's name is Mephiles. They don't ever mention it prior to this scene, which is weird, but whatever. So yeah, apparently Mephiles is just strolling around the city streets, taking in the sights, you know, absorbing the local culture. And Silver comes up to him and finally starts asking him, like, who is this Iblis Trigger again? And how does he cause the future to become fucked? And Mephiles is basically like, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. Just go along with it. He's like the writer of a Sonic game. And for some reason, Silver takes this as an answer, because he is a moron. And so he once again goes after Sonic, attacks him, yada yada yada. Elise gets captured, Sonic gets away because Shadow shows up to intervene intervene. Oh yeah, and Blaze is just gone, by the way. She's just vanished for this scene because, you know, whatever, who cares? And of course, Silver thinks this is Mephiles initially until he properly introduces himself. Which, by the way, one thing I want to point out, not a major problem or anything, but a little weird thing that's worth noting. So in Sonic Adventure 2, everyone thinks that Sonic and Shadow look the same, even though they don't really look the same, but that's what that story was trying to establish and get across. But after that game, no one ever makes that mistake again. Like, I know that we as the audience are now very acquainted with Shadow, and a lot of these characters know Shadow, so they're not going to make that mistake anymore. But still, theoretically, if the intention was that Sonic and Shadow look similar to people, then that intention would still be valid long after the events of SA2, wouldn't it? So shouldn't Silver, who has never seen Shadow before, go like, hey, you look just like the Iblis trigger, but he doesn't? Really, in that metric, since Mephiles looks just like Shadow, he should also be saying that Mephiles looks just like Sonic too, but none of that ever happens because now that we've been introduced to Shadow, he's no longer a mysterious character that looks like Sonic, and so now all of the new characters that meet him for the first time don't mistake him for Sonic, even though everyone else did when they first met. This is one of those things where it's like, well, we don't want to go through the whole song and dance every single time, and it doesn't really matter. We already know who Shadow is, so whatever, fuck it. Now, magically, they don't look the same in everyone's eyes, even though they did before. Like I said, not really a problem, just like a weird little writing thing that you sometimes see with long-running series like this. Anyway, Silver and Shadow fight for a while, but of course, Shadow has the power of chaos control, and so he is able to freeze time and then kick Silver in the back of the head, which everybody loves because fuck Silver. And then Shadow's all like, bro, you should really stop trying to fight me. With the Chaos Emerald, I can do whatever I want, and there's really nothing you can do about it. But Silver, out of his sheer determination to save the future, he pulls out his Chaos Emerald that he got before, and he also does Chaos Control. And I didn't point this out in Sonic's campaign, the fact that Silver just does Chaos Control out of nowhere, because it is introduced and set up here, and I think it's actually fairly well done. Because if you watch my Sonic Heroes story video, I talked about how I don't think everyone can do Chaos Control and has super forms like that. I think it's supposed to be a rare ability that only a few people have. Sonic is one of those special individuals that is able to control the power of the Chaos Emerald, and Shadow was created to copy Sonic, which is why he can do it. And one of the things that led me to believe that this is such a rare ability is Shadow's reaction to Silver pulling off Chaos Control. He's surprised. He's like, holy shit, you just did Chaos Control. Why would Shadow have such an extreme reaction to someone doing that if it was something anyone could do? This is clearly supposed to be a moment of like, oh shit, Silver can do Chaos Control. He just tried it and it worked, just like Sonic back in SA2. This is to me meant to convey that whatever special thing Sonic has that makes him able to do it, Silver has it as well. Most likely for Silver, it comes from his determination to try to save the future. However, when he says that to Shadow, Shadow realizes that this guy has been duped by Mephiles. Obviously, we don't exactly know what's going on with Shadow and Mephiles, but considering Mephiles looks just like Shadow, there's some kind of relationship going on there in Shadow's story, and Shadow knows a little bit more about Mephiles than Silver does. And he gives him the lowdown that, bro, you're being tricked, and Mephiles is not trying to help you save the future. And Silver's like, what now? What you talking about? And Shadow's like, let me show you what happened 10 years ago, and you'll understand. And they jump into the portal, which I find a little weird, because they accidentally created that portal, and yet it takes them to exactly when and where they want to be, which is a little convenient, but as I said, you'll find the portals in this game are very, very convenient most of the time. So yeah, Silver and Shadow travel back 10 years, and if you recall from the Sonic campaign, Elise mentioned that 10 years ago, the Flames of Disaster were almost released and led to the destruction of the world. And that is where her father died, so what is it that happened 10 years ago? Well, let's see.
あれはあの炎イブリース
そして黒い影の方が本来のメフィレス
あれがメフィレス逃げるぞ
二手に分かれよ僕はメフィレスを追う
分かったイブリースは俺に任せろ
Silver chases after their newly created Iblis and tries to hold him with his telekinesis, and this is where Elise's father shows up and says that we have to seal Iblis inside a royal soul. So he takes a Chaos Emerald and does some magic hocus pocus, and then Iblis goes inside Elise. So now Iblis is sealed away, however there is one caveat to that.
そう何があっても泣いてはいけないよ涙はお前の中の炎を呼び起こしてしまうから何があっても泣いたりしない立派な女王になれ
Now, I'm not the first person to point this out, but, like, this setup here is fucking stupid. So, like, this is why, you know, Elise's father told her that she has to become a strong queen and don't cry. It's not just because of your position as a royalty or whatever. It's because you have to stop a giant fire Satan demon from being released. But, like, realistically, there's no fucking way that you're ever gonna get a kid to not cry for their entire fucking life. Like, regardless of emotional strength or whatever, or really bottling up your emotions in an unhealthy way that eventually leads to serious mental health conditions later on in life. But aside from that, like, what if she watches a sad movie or reads a sad book or whatever, or she stubs her toe particularly badly, or someone's chopping onions near her? Like, no crying whatsoever for your entire life. Not to mention that this little girl's fucking father just died, and she's not supposed to cry to that at all in her entire life? Yeah, good fucking luck getting me to buy that, bro. This is so fucking dumb. But anyway, so Silver has sealed Iblis inside of Elise, and Shadow managed to seal Mephiles in that scepter in his own campaign stuff. So now it's very clear to Silver that Mephiles is not at all a good guy, as he obviously has some relation to Iblis and the Flames of Disaster and Solaris and all that. But before returning to the present, he decides to leave the blue Chaos Emerald that he got from before behind with Elise, as, you know, it can act as a good luck charm, as she has all this responsibility on her, and a giant fire demon inside of her that could get out at any moment. So, you know, maybe the Chaos Emerald will help her out. I get the sentiment of it, and that's fine. But can we talk about the logic of this a little bit? Holy fuck does this break everything, because where did Silver get that blue Chaos Emerald? He got it from Eggman, who got it from Sonic, who got it from Elise. And Elise gets this Chaos Emerald from Silver 10 years ago. And this is one of those things where we can't exactly say how this is supposed to work because the time travel rules in this story are extremely inconsistent and don't make any fucking sense. For the duration of every single Sonic game up to this point, there have actually been 8 Chaos Emeralds this whole time, and Elise had an additional blue Chaos Emerald that appeared 10 years ago when Silver gave it to her, which means in any instance where someone was trying to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds and they had 6 of them, there were actually 2 Chaos Emeralds that they could have hunted down, but of course, conveniently, no one's Emerald radars or anything like that ever picked up the Chaos Emerald that was in Soliana this whole time. And this is a thing that completely breaks the canon of the Sonic series, where you're like, this game can't be canon. It cannot physically be canon. No matter how you look at it from a time travel perspective, this cannot exist in the same universe as the other Sonic games, which I actually don't find too hard to believe, because there are a number of things about this game that to me smack of kind of being a bit of a canon reset a little bit. Like, there's not really that many references to past games in this directly where people talk about things that have happened before, and there's not really that much that relies on previous Sonic games. I mean, yeah, like Sonic knows who Knuckles is, so presumably Sonic 3 had to happen, but not necessarily. This could just be some alternate world where Sonic and Knuckles already know each other via some events that we never saw, and they have a similar relationship. The fact that Knuckles isn't the Guardian of the Master Emerald, well, maybe that's because this Knuckles isn't the Guardian of the Master Emerald, because this is a separate continuity from the previous Sonic games. Same thing with Tails not being an inventor, and Blaze, her entire character thing entirely, could all be products of the fact that this doesn't really explicitly follow up previous Sonic games, even though it has characters and certain relationships that feel similar to things that have been established previously. More realistically, I don't think this is the case. I think it's just bad writing and they didn't really think it through that much, but there are a number of things here that make me believe that the only way this story could exist is if it was in its own separate continuity from all of the other Sonic games. By the way, does anyone find it weird that Elise's father was able to use a Chaos Emerald to seal Iblis? Like, he's just a normal human guy, and I mean, I guess that's not explicitly Chaos Control. He's, like, asking Solaris, his god, to do it, or whatever. Again, this is weird, like, JRPG stuff that they just shoved into Sonic, and it doesn't really fit, but whatever, who fucking cares? So Silver jumps through the portal back to the present, and again, ultra-convenient portals. Blaze is right there. And her response to seeing Silver jump out of a portal is, what did you see? Like, she knew that Silver went to the past to figure out, like, who Mephiles is and all that, but Blaze wasn't actually present when Silver and Shadow went back in time. The last time she saw Silver, they were like, hey, let's go after Sonic in the train station, and now she's just here, and she's like, oh, Silver, what'd you see in the past? It's like, excuse me, how the fuck do you even know that Silver was in the past? Did you read the script? What the fuck is going on here? Bad writing, that's what. Silver explains to Blaze that Sonic isn't actually the Iblis trigger, and he's finally realized that Mephiles was full of shit. And then a crowd of people that we can't see because it would cost way too much money to animate them start chatting about how the princess has given herself up to Eggman after he threatened the entire city. And Silver comes to realize that, it might be Eggman, the person that he's not met and doesn't know who that is whatsoever. He's probably the one who's going to be the Iblis trigger and try to release Iblis that's sealed inside Elise. However, can we just stop here for a second, because there's another thing about the time travel that I need to touch on. The time travel in this fucking game, it doesn't work like time travel does at all. Because, you know, it's time travel. You can go to any point in time you want. I mean, again, they're not really specific, so they don't really say whether or not you can precisely pick where you want to go. But conveniently, every time someone time travels, they always travel, like, linearly forward in time relative to how long they've been in the alternate time. Like, for example, Silver was just attacking Sonic when he was going to save Elise on the train. Shadow interrupts, and then they go on their little adventure into the past, and then while they're doing that, Sonic saves Elise, and they get away, and he brings her back to the castle, and then Eggman comes with his threat of, Elise, give yourself up or I'm gonna attack the city, so she surrenders herself to him. Then, after their little adventure in the past, Silver comes back to the present at this exact point in time, even though there's no reason for him to come to this precise moment in time, where the exact same amount of time has passed in the past as it has in the present. The way that time travel is written in this game, it's not written like time is one linear series of events and you can jump around to any point on that line. It's written like the past, present, and future are 3 locations, and time progresses at the same rate in all 3 of those locations, and you can only jump to the other location, either from the past to the present to the future, but you will always travel to the same point on the timeline, no matter which of these 3 eras you're going to. Does that make sense? I mean, there are a couple of instances where they do something different than that, like when Sonic goes back to save Elise after the egg carrier crashes, but things like this is just like, why does Silver come back to this exact moment? No real reason other than just because. And this is why in Sonic's story, when he's in the future, he's like, we gotta hurry and save Elise before the egg carrier crashes, because time is still progressing in the present while it's progressing in the future, and the way the story is written, if they take too long in the future, then they won't be able to get back to the present in time to save Elise, even though that doesn't make any sense with how time travel works. But anyway, that could be like the catchphrase for this fucking video, because I gotta go on so many tangents on how shitty this game's story is. Back to the story, this is where Silver goes after Elise, and he meets up with Sonic, and Blaze is completely gone from this scene because people disappear and appear whenever they feel like it. And now they team up to go after Eggman, and then they fail, and then they make the time portal, and hey Sonic, you go back in time and save Elise. We're gonna go back to the future. Though one incredibly weird thing about this is that Silver and Blaze jump into the same portal that Sonic did. So how do these portals work exactly? Do they just take you to wherever you want to go? Because Sonic jumped into this and went to the past, and then they jump into this and go to the future. How the fuck does that work? Don't fucking think about it, that's how. But another thing about this is that when Silver and Blaze go back to the future, oh look, it's still a fiery hellscape. What's going on there? Well, now we need to talk about the type of time travel in Sonic 06, or rather the types. Because generally in stories, there's mainly two ways that you can do time travel. One is to do alternate timelines, which is every time you go back in time, you make a change, you create a new alternate timeline with a different series of events from the one you're originally from. Generally, this is the most logical way to do time travel, and it's the one that makes the most sense. The other common way you see time travel done is with a causality loop, which means no one can ever actually make any changes when they go back in time, because everything that they do when they go back has already occurred in their own timeline. They're not actually going back to change anything, they are just perpetuating the series of events that have already occurred. And for the most part, Sonic 06 seems to operate on a causality loop, and I'm not the biggest fan of causality loops because they inherently don't really make sense. Like, for example, the Blue Chaos Emerald, going on the causality loop of Silver giving it to Elise when he comes back in time, he gets that from Elise, essentially, which means that the Blue Chaos Emerald in this story created itself out of time travel, which doesn't really, like, what? Where did it come from? Whatever, shut up. The reason I say that Sonic 06 seems to generally operate on a causality loop is because if there was an original timeline, quote-unquote, where no time travel had occurred yet, then the entire Sonic universe wouldn't be able to exist, because if there was a version of the Solaris experiment that went wrong 10 years ago where Silver and Shadow didn't show up, then Iblis and Mephiles would have just been released right then, and the entire world would have been destroyed 10 years prior to every single Sonic game happening. So there can't be a version of events originally where Silver and Shadow weren't there. They always had to appear in order to make any of the events of this game happen. So that means when Silver comes back to the future, the reason it's still destroyed is because he didn't actually make any changes when he went back. All of the things that happen in the present already happened in his own timeline 200 years ago. The issue with this is that Sonic 06 contradicts its own time travel rules, because as we see at the end of Sonic's story, you can change what happens because he manages to save Elise from the crashing egg carrier. Now, you could say that, for all we know, when Sonic and Silver are watching the egg carrier crash from afar here, there could very well be another Sonic on the egg carrier right now saving Elise, and Sonic just doesn't know about that. And so there you go, the causality loop is maintained, except for one problem, which is that earlier in the Sonic story, we see in the future that there's a news article about Elise's death that specifically says she died during the egg carrier's crash. Which, by the way, side note, how did someone even write that article? Because when Elise dies, wouldn't that just release Iblis and then the entire world is fucked? Who was writing news articles while everyone around them was dying in fire? And even if there was a news article about that, why would it be about Elise dying in a crash rather than a giant fire demon has appeared and has destroyed the entire planet? Shut up, that's why. The point is that in Silver's future, Elise did die on the egg carrier crash, but as we see, Sonic is able to use time travel to change those events, which means that he has now escaped from the causality loop, which you should not be able to do based on the rules of this time travel. You cannot both have a causality loop and multiple timelines because those two types of time travel directly contradict one another. They cannot exist at the same time. Unless you just write time travel poorly and create plot holes, which is exactly what's happened here. Now, granted, later in the story, Iblis still eventually does get released from Elise after Sonic saves her, but that's not due to her dying on the egg carrier crash, which is what the news article in the future says, so that would be a different series of events, unless that news article was wrong about what happened or something. Really, it's this thing right here. If they just remove this from the story, there'd be no problems here, but because they have this, it essentially breaks the very concept of time travel within this story and the way it works. Of course, a causality loop does contradict what Sonic CD shows us about the time travel in this universe, because that definitely shows us that you can go back in time and change the future. However, it still wouldn't really change Silver's future necessarily, because if we now go with an idea of multiple timelines, then Sonic would go back in time and save Elise, and that would create a new timeline, but Silver is not in that timeline because he did not go back in time with Sonic. He is still on the timeline where Elise just died in the egg carrier crash, so when he goes to the future, it's the future on the same timeline where it would still be fucked. Which means that if Silver went back in time with Sonic and then went to the future, then everything would be fine. So either this doesn't make any sense because we're contradicting a causality loop, or Silver is an idiot who doesn't understand how time travel works if we're going with multiple timelines. So either way, this is dumb. And also, I find it odd that Silver and Blaze aren't at all surprised when they come back to the future that nothing has changed. The entire reason they went back in time was to change events to save the future, but then they come back and nothing has happened, and they're not even like, what? Nothing's changed. I guess we can't fix the past after all. Like, they're just like, okay, so that didn't work, let's fix things in the present now instead of going to the past to fix it. Which also means that them helping Sonic save Elise is entirely pointless from their perspective because it didn't actually accomplish their goal. Which again, this is just like Trunks in DBZ where he goes back in time to fix things, but when he returns to his own time, nothing has actually changed and he just has to fix things in his own time anyway. And also similar to Trunks, thanks to their time-traveling adventures, Silver and Blaze now do have a way to defeat Iblis when they didn't have one before, because Silver learned that with a Chaos Emerald, you can seal Iblis inside of someone, so hey, let's just do that, and bada boom, Iblis is taken care of. That's fine, you know, set up, Silver learned that earlier in the story, but another thing worth pointing out is, remember that Chaos Emerald count from before? Silver currently has the white and the cyan Chaos Emeralds. Where did he get those again? Well, he got the white one from Elise's father 10 years ago, and he got the cyan one from Sonic just now. So again, if we were to think about this logically, this would mean that for the past 10 years, the white Chaos Emerald did not exist until Silver came back into the present. Which again means that all of the previous Sonic games could not have happened. And let's not forget the count in the present, so there were 8 Chaos Emeralds because of the extra one that was brought back from the future, but now there are 2 less, so now we're up to 6 Chaos Emeralds in the present. Isn't this time travel shit just lovely? Now, as for the conclusion of Silver's story, he and Blaze go after Iblis one final time, they defeat Iblis, and now they attempt to seal him inside of themselves using the Chaos Emerald. Silver tries it at first, but for some reason, he's not able to take Iblis inside of him. Apparently, you need a royal soul for Iblis to inhabit, which doesn't really make any sense, because royalty isn't actually, like, a thing. It's just a social construct, so how would magic detect that? But whatever. For whatever reason, Silver can't be a host to Iblis. However, Blaze, as she already is, you know, in tune with fire and all that, she can become the host. And after absorbing Iblis inside of her, she tells Silver to use Chaos Control to stop time and then seal her into a different dimension. I guess that was the plan. They never mentioned that to us previously, but whatever. I guess it makes sense to ensure that Iblis never escapes when Blaze dies or whatever. So this is essentially Blaze trying to make the noble sacrifice here. But of course Silver is like, no, I can't do it, Blaze, you're my best friend. To which Blaze responds,
やはり青いな。でも、お前のそういう青さは嫌いじゃない。頑張れよ、シルバー。
Now, I'm gonna be honest. I have no fucking idea what just happened there. Like, she turned into a ghost and then disappeared or something? Was that her going into another dimension? Did she do that herself? Could she do chaos control? I'm not entirely sure what I just saw with my 2 eyeballs, but I guess Iblis is taken care of, so yay! And that is the end of Silver's story, and a lot of people seem to like the ending here, you know, Blaze's sacrifice and the relationship between Silver and Blaze. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really understand why. First of all, Silver and Blaze's relationship is not well set up whatsoever throughout this game. They say that they're best friends, but we don't ever really get anything like that, because they don't ever really talk to each other like friends. We never get a feel for what their relationship is. Blaze and Silver's conversations are always completely pragmatic, where it's like, we have a goal and we have to accomplish this goal, and how are we going to accomplish this goal, and let's go, we have to do it. That's all they talk about the entire game. It's just, how do we defeat Iblis? What do we do about the present? We go back in time. We have to hunt down the Iblis trigger. We gotta defeat him in order to save our time. We have to seal Iblis. That is literally all they talk about the entire story. We never get a moment where they're like, you know, joking around with each other, or any kind of banter or anything that makes us feel that these two are friends.
やつがまた出た。なんとか抑えられたか。青いハリネズミ。こんなところにいたのか。探したぞ。青いな。正しいとか間違ってるとか、それは私にもわからない。ただ確かなのは、この機会を逃せば、未来世界は救われないままということだ。カオスエメラルドだ。人の思いを力に変える宝石だ。7つ集めると奇跡を呼ぶと言われている。お守り代わりに持っているといい。何を見てきた？何でもこの国の王女がドクターエッグマンの脅迫に応じて単身向かっていったらしい。策があるのか？では急ごう。炎の気配を感じる。
Now, I understand that they're in a very dire living situation, so it's not like they're going to be cracking jokes while people are dying in fire all around them. But we need something to understand their relationship. The way it comes across, they just feel like partners that are working together to achieve a common goal. There's really nothing here to make me feel like these two have a particularly strong bond together, and then suddenly at the end, it's like, Blaze, no, you're my friend, we've been through everything together, and I'm like, where the fuck is this coming from? And so this entire sacrifice thing here falls completely flat. And as far as Silver's character arc, or rather I should say attempt at a character arc, that also completely fails as well, because I assume the idea here is Silver is supposed to be sacrificing Blaze's life for the greater good, because that is what he was contemplating earlier after he started to question whether or not it was right to kill Sonic to save the future. You know, this is a very standard hero-type story to do, of like, is it right to kill someone in order to save more people, yada yada. And that would be fine if we explored that theme with Silver, but we actually don't explore it. He never has that moment where he realizes, no, it's not right to do that, there has to be another way. Silver never does that. Instead, he just realizes that he was being tricked by Mephiles and that he doesn't actually have to kill Sonic to save the future, and it's only when Blaze is sacrificing herself that this comes back. But this doesn't really work as a continuation of that arc, because Sonic was just some random person that existed in the past that Silver had to kill to save the future. Blaze is supposedly his friend, and so it's not the same thing. It's not, oh, I have to kill someone for the greater good. It's, I have to kill my friend. And so that whole contemplation of, like, is it right to kill another person, that isn't even relevant here, because it's Silver's own emotional turmoil about killing his own friend, not the moral turmoil of killing an innocent person for the greater good. So that entire arc that they set up of Silver questioning what was right for saving the world just gets dropped and goes nowhere for this completely flaccid, oh, my friend, even though she's not really my friend, but she is because I said she's my friend, I can't do it, even though it doesn't really fucking matter. This is not set up properly at all in either way. Their relationship is not strong enough for this to work emotionally, And logically, this does not forward the arc that they were trying to do with Silver. This is just nothing. It goes nowhere. This is fucking garbage. Not to mention the logical flaws of them coming back to the future. Again, they come back right in the same point in time that they were in the present, after all these events have happened, rather than going back to, like, the beginning of Iblis's release, so that way he doesn't have the opportunity to destroy the entire world. Why don't you seal him right after Iblis gets released when Elise dies? That way you can prevent all of this suffering and ruination that's happened for the past 200 years. Now we're just gonna go back to exactly where we were and save the world now after it's already fucked. Silver's story is fucking garbage. And to be honest, I don't understand why anyone likes Silver the Hedgehog as a character. Like, this is the only game where he gets a considerable amount of screen time, and pretty much the only game where he actually gets a story to himself. And there's just nothing here. Personality-wise, he doesn't really have much going on. He's naive and optimistic, you know, he'll never give up no matter how dire the situation is. And he's a good guy, and that's pretty much his entire character. Like, literally almost everything he says in this game is like, I'm gonna save my world, and that's it. That's Silver's character. He fucking sucks. With Sonic's story, at least if things were tweaked and moved around, I think it could have worked better. This is just a giant fucking disaster. I think this is complete trash. Silver's story is awful. He's a terrible character. Blah. So now that just leaves us with Shadow's story, which is inherently more interesting than the other two stories, in my opinion, for two main reasons, which is that in the other stories, we've of course gotten the tease of Mephiles, this mysterious character that looks like Shadow. No matter how you play through the game, you're always going to see Mephiles before you're able to play Shadow's story, so you're always left wondering who this character is and what his whole deal is. And of course, this is the first time we're seeing Shadow after the events of Shadow the Hedgehog, after he has abandoned his past and everything that happened 50 years ago with Maria and the Ark and all that. Shadow's done with all that. He is now his own person that is determining his own destiny. And so we're left to wonder, what is Shadow up to now that he is his own person? Being fucking awesome, that's what.
HQ より通達。ドクターエッグマン基地最深部より SOS を確認。当該エージェントとの通信は26時間前に途絶している。速やかなる救出を期待する。シャドウ・ザ・ヘッジホッグ。
了解した。ミッションを開始する。
So yeah, apparently after the events of Shadow the Hedgehog, Shadow has decided to join Gun. Some people take issue with this, as they find it odd why Shadow would be willing to join the organization that killed Maria and ruined his entire life. But that's mainly people who don't understand the events of Shadow the Hedgehog and what's actually happening there, because as we know, this Shadow does not care about what happened all those years ago and the old Shadow's life. He's not really bothered at all by what Gun has done in the past, not to mention that at the end of Shadow the Hedgehog, the President has a whole thing about how we need to build a brighter future, so I find it pretty believable that Gun has changed their ways due to all the things that have happened in previous games. And I personally find Shadow joining Gun to be a fairly logical thing to do with his character, because considering that this Shadow, basically his life begins at Sonic Heroes, he doesn't really have anything in life, you know, he doesn't know many people, he doesn't really have anything that he cares about, or a home, or anything like that. The only thing that he really does have is his friendships that he built with Rouge and Omega during the events of Sonic Heroes. And Rouge works for Gun, so I guess it's sensible for Shadow, with no real direction of where to go in his life, he just decides to join Gun because Rouge is part of Gun, just so he can stick with her. Although previously Rouge didn't really work for Gun, she worked for the President, but I mean, I guess that's not that much of a stretch to say she shifted organizations or whatever. It's all working for the government at the end of the day. Now, one other thing I want to touch on at the beginning is Shadow's portrayal in this game. You know, everybody likes Shadow because he's super cool and stuff, but this game, and Shadow the Hedgehog as well, especially the opening, They really go out of their way to make Shadow seem like the coolest and strongest and bestest character ever. And it's a little bit over the top in my opinion. Like the creators were like, well, Shadow is cool, so let's make him even more cool. Like previously, Shadow was essentially just able to do anything that Sonic can do, and yeah, he had Chaos Control, but Sonic also learned that during the events of SA2. However, once you bring Shadow back and Sonic doesn't continue to use Chaos Control, that's a little bit weird. Meanwhile, we get to this game now, and Shadow is just fucking using Chaos powers all the fucking time. He's teleporting around, freezing time, shooting energy blasts, creating giant explosions. Shadow's just so fucking cool and he could do anything because he's Shadow. He's super cool and sick and awesome. He's got the Chaos powers. He's the best. And it's just, like, very, like, I don't know, try hard of, like, look at how cool this character is. But I guess I'm not really gonna criticize it that much, because it is pretty cool, but it's also a little bit silly how hard they try to push Shadow in these games. And it's also worth noting that previously, Shadow needed a Chaos Emerald to do Chaos Control, which I think makes sense. You need a Chaos Emerald to control the energy of a Chaos Emerald. But now, as we see in this cutscene here, and during the gameplay, Shadow is able to just use Chaos powers willy-nilly as much as he wants without needing a Chaos Emerald. And I'm not personally too opposed to this idea, except for the fact that it was already established in the previous games that Shadow did need a Chaos Emerald to do Chaos Control. Every time he's done it before, he had a Chaos Emerald. The only instance where he doesn't is during the final boss of Sonic Adventure 2, which I think was just a continuity error. I'm pretty sure the intention was that you needed a Chaos Emerald to use Chaos powers, and now they've kind of just retconned that, which is another thing that makes me think that this is almost a separate continuity from the previous Sonic games. Which also then kind of is weird because it's not really certain whether or not this is actually following up Shadow the Hedgehog and Shadow, you know, determining his own destiny and all that. I mean, it seems like it is, but there's so many things that contradict previous games that I don't even fucking know anymore. But that's enough preamble. Let's actually start talking about the plot of Shadow's story. As you saw, it opens with Shadow being on a mission to rescue someone from Eggman's base. And that someone turns out to be Rouge, who was infiltrating Eggman's base in order to steal this little scepter here, which is referred to as the Curtain of Darkness in the Japanese version. Shadow manages to recover Rouge, and then they escape from Eggman's base. And then there's a very weird scene where Shadow and Rouge end up in this room with this computer and basically give us a bunch of exposition about Soliana and Princess Elise. And I just find it very odd that, like, now we're establishing Soliana as a country and all this stuff. Seems a little bit late to explaining these things to us, doesn't it? I guess it works to establish these things for Shadow's story, since Shadow doesn't really get involved with, like, Princess Elise and all that. Anyway, Shadow and Rouge head to the gun rendezvous point, but they end up getting ambushed by Eggman, who's trying to take back the Curtain of Darkness from them. And there's a little bit of a scuffle that results in the scepter getting broken. And one nice little character detail here is that Rouge gets knocked out of the air and she drops the scepter, and it and her are both falling. And while the scepter is clearly something very important, and it's what their mission was all about, good guy Shadow goes to catch Rouge instead. What an edgelord, am I right? And if you remember from the Silver story, Shadow sealed Mephiles 10 years ago in a very similar looking scepter, now didn't he? And this is a pretty cool scene that I'm just gonna let rock, because it's one of the few scenes in this game that I think, in general, is just pretty well done.
Shadow!
いかん撤退撤退撤退
影が
なんという運命の皮肉。まさかこの僕が君の影を得て復活することになるとはね。礼を言うよ、シャドウ・ザ・ヘッジホッ
君は誰だ？なぜ僕の名を？
僕はメフィレス。闇のメフィレス。なんだ、忘れちゃったのかい？君にはとても世話になったんだよ、シャドウ。あ、そうだ。僕から君へのお返しだ。夢のツアーへの片道切符だよ。
Okay, I mean, that teleporting looked absolutely terrible, but pretty cool scene. And one thing I really like about Mephiles, I don't know if this was entirely intentional. Think about Sonic. In general, Sonic is the representative of nature and beauty and a little bit of the magical elements of the Sonic universe. And then you have Sonic's doppelganger, Metal Sonic, which is representative of humanity and technology. Then you have the other Sonic in Shadow, who is also a representative of humanity and technology, and so his evil doppelganger is of a magical origin. Not sure if that was an intentional mirroring that they did there, but I think it's pretty cool. And of course, you know, Mephiles being Shadow's shadow, like I'm sure the writers thought they were real clever when they came up with that. A little bit goofy and silly, but I quite like the idea. I think it's fun. And so now, this is how Shadow and Rouge were in the future when they met up with Sonic and friends. And of course, considering that you can play these different stories in different orders, you might not necessarily know that Shadow is the one that sealed Mephiles 10 years ago, and so there's this mystery of who Mephiles is and why he knows Shadow. So after some wandering around in the ruined future, Shadow and Rouge come across a computer terminal with some data, and this is how they figure out that they're stuck in the future. Shadow also comments that when Mephiles transported them, it felt very similar to Chaos Control, which is where he gets the idea that with enough power, perhaps they can use Chaos Control to return to the present. And this is where they meet up with Sonic and friends. After coming up with their plan, the two groups split up to look for Chaos Emeralds, and Shadow and Rouge managed to find one fairly easily, and while walking around the destroyed city, look who they end up finding.
Omega? どうしてこんなところに?
完全に停止しているようだ。
何があったっていうの？私たちの未来で。はい、こちらルージュ。了解。すぐに行くわ。ソニックたちも何か見つけたようよ。行きましょう。私たちにしてあげられることは何もないわ。
ああ。
I very much like how much Rouge and Shadow seem to be bothered by having to just leave that old abandoned Omega there. We didn't really get very much of those three in Shadow the Hedgehog, but you know, Sonic Heroes, there was a big deal about establishing these characters and how they grow to actually like each other throughout the course of that story. And this game is very much continuing off of that, which a lot of people like because this is a very fun trio of characters. I find it a little weird that Shadow is fiddling around with Omega's internals. You know, that's always been a part of his character, right? Shadow the hacker. He knows all about robots and stuff. Whatever, doesn't really matter. Just a small thing that seemed a bit off to me. Another quick thing I want to note here is that Rouge and Knuckles do still kind of have their banterous relationship from Sonic Adventure 2. But unfortunately, this is one of the last few instances where this happens. You know, Rouge was created to be Knuckles' rival, and pretty much every single thing about her character was created in reference to Knuckles to oppose him. But as the series progresses, the relationship that those two have, I guess they just forgot about. So anyway, the two groups reunite, they manage to get the two Chaos Emeralds, and then they create the portal to go back in time. Sonic and friends jump in, but remember, Shadow saw something before he jumped in the portal. What was that something? Can I just take this moment to say that Shadow's story is by far the best of the three in this game? By this point on your first playthrough, you might actually be genuinely engaged in what's going on here, because we still don't really know who Mephiles is or what his deal is. There's still a lot of mystery surrounding this character, and, you know, you want answers just as much as Shadow does. That said, this story isn't perfect, and it does still have its problems, but it's certainly a hell of a lot better than the other two. So now, before continuing on with Shadow, we cut over to Rouge, who did go through the portal. And she's obviously worried about Shadow, who stayed behind. And for some reason, she has the Chaos Emerald that Shadow was holding. I have no fucking idea how this ended up coming through the portal. They don't really show it. Sonic and Shadow use the Chaos Emeralds to create it, and then they just disappear from their hands. And I guess off-screen we didn't see it, but Shadow chucked his Chaos Emerald into the portal or something. And so Rouge is thinking, oh no, he's gonna need a Chaos Emerald to get back. I need to get this Chaos Emerald back to Shadow. How on earth is she gonna do that, though? Well, the answer is actually something pretty clever.
至急 E123 オメガとコンタクトを取りたいんだけど。
This is a cool little moment for the plot, but can I just say, what the fuck did they do to Omega in this game? Before, Omega was able to move very quickly and agilely, just like anybody else, and he was able to speak like a normal person. You know, he had a heavy, like, robot filter on his voice. But generally, before, Omega was very cool and aggressive. He seemed like a fucking murder machine that just wanted to destroy anything that got in his way. Now, Omega has been completely changed character-wise to Robot Man. What the fuck is this? This isn't Omega, this fucking sucks. Kinda shitty that this game gives us the reuniting of Team Dark, but then one of its key characters doesn't act anything like he did before. I have no idea why they decided to completely change the way Omega behaves, but I certainly do not approve of it whatsoever. But anyway, plot-wise, you know, Rouge gives this green Chaos Emerald to Omega and essentially just tells him, wait until this exact moment and then give this emerald to Shadow and go help him out. And this is where we now cut back to Shadow and his confrontation with Mephiles. And once again, this is a pretty cool scene, so I'm just gonna let it rock.
君の目的は何だ? この世界を滅ぼしたのも君なのか?
そうでもあり、違うとも言える。君にいいものを見せてあげよう。そう、君だ。イブリスの炎で世界が滅びた後、人間どもは何をしたと思う？犯人探しさ。誰がこの最悪を招いたのか。人間どもはただ恐れていたんだよ。君の力をね。本当は君を排除できれば理由は何でもよかったのさ。僕と来なよ、シャドウ。さあ、すべての因果を焼き払い、この愚かな世界を断罪するんだ。君にはその権利がある。
くだらん。やりたいならば一人でやるんだな。
君は許すのか、この愚行を。
僕の未来は僕が決める。
So let's talk a little bit more about Mephiles, because obviously his name is derived from Mephistopheles, and that is kind of a motif with Shadow. Both his stories in Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog both very much have biblical elements to them. I mean, Black Doom was very clearly just essentially supposed to be the devil in the last game, and Shadow's story in SA2 was very allegorical to like a savior type thing, and so I guess for this game they were like, well, at this point Shadow's kind of a religiously biblically themed character, so I guess all of Shadow's bad guys need to be demons in some way or another. I don't particularly love or hate Shadow being a biblically inspired character, but at this point, it is an established part of his character, so it's at least nice that they're keeping that consistent. And Mephiles very much does kind of fill the role of a devil-style character, where he's trying to tempt Shadow into embracing the dark side. It's not perfect, in my opinion. Like, again, he talks about how humanity hunted down Shadow, and again, I'm like, what humanity? What humans are living in this fiery hellscape? And it's weird that with everything destroyed, somehow Shadow is trapped in like a sci-fi prison or whatever. But that's not really my biggest problem with this whole thing. My problem is, we already did this last game. This is essentially the same thing as Black Doom trying to manipulate Shadow in the Dark Stories of Shadow the Hedgehog. And in that game, Shadow already made the conviction that he's not going to let other people control him, and he's going to decide for himself what he does with his life. So why are we just rehashing that exact same story element again? It doesn't really work to have a hero tempted by evil when we already know that there's no way this character is going to be tempted by anything. The entire time Mephiles is talking, all I can think is, bruh, Shadow's not going to listen to a fucking thing you say, and that's exactly what happens. It is a little bit different, and I'll talk about that later, but it is still ultimately very, very similar to stuff we already saw in the very previous game. So anyway, Shadow and Mephiles fight for a while, and when it looks like Mephiles is just about to get the upper hand...
Omega!
Aw, hell yeah, turns out that Omega that Shadow and Rouge encountered before was not deactivated after all, he was just waiting. Look at that, some actually effective setup and payoff in this story, I very much approve. And now with Shadow and Omega both there, Mephiles is forced to retreat, and they follow him through his portal. And once again, very conveniently, it takes them exactly where they should be in the present relative to how much time has passed in the future, because that's how time travel works in this story. Shadow and Omega meet up with Rouge, who says that Eggman's mechs have been looking for Shadow, which Shadow says is more likely that they're actually looking for Mephiles, which doesn't really make that much sense, because Eggman wasn't present when Mephiles took Shadow's form, so how does he know that Mephiles looks like Shadow? Shut up, that's how. And Shadow gets the idea that, well, Eggman was the one that had the Curtain of Darkness in the first place, so he probably has an idea of who Mephiles is, so Shadow decides to ask the Doctor directly. One thing before we move on, though, where were we on that Chaos Emerald count? Sonic brought back one from the future, and now Shadow has done the same, but of course we can't forget that, thanks to Silver, the White Chaos Emerald no longer exists in the present, so we're actually still just at 8 Chaos Emeralds right now. However, more significant than there being 8 Chaos Emeralds, there are 2 Omegas now. There's the one that just came back from the future with Shadow, and then there's the one that's waiting with the green Chaos Emerald to help him out in the future. This other Omega is never referenced again for the rest of the story because the writers forgot that that Omega still exists because, again, time travel in this story is written as locations, and so when Omega from the present was given that Chaos Emerald and he waited, that was him traveling to the future, and now Omega has traveled from the future back to the present, and so the way the story is written, there's only one Omega right now, even though logically, due to time travel, there would be 2 at this moment. That is incredibly fucking bizarre, and almost kind of a bit of a missed opportunity. Imagine if they grabbed the other Omega right now, and then they had 2 fucking Omegas on the team. That would be kinda sick. So anyway, Shadow hunts down Dr. Eggman and asks him who Mephiles is and what's going on. And Eggman's being all coy and he's like, yeah, what's going on indeed, I wonder. All he really tells Shadow is that it has something to do with what happened with the Solaris project 10 years ago. And he tells Shadow that if he captures Mephiles and brings Mephiles back to Eggman, then he'll get his answers. Obviously, Eggman just wants to get Mephiles back as he's trying to gain control of the old Solaris project, as we've seen in the other story. Eggman is quite a busy person in this game, isn't he? He's trying to capture Elise because Iblis is trapped in her. He had the Curtain of Darkness, so he also had Mephiles at the time, and he's also hunting for the Chaos Emeralds all at once. I mean, this scene takes place while Sonic is going after Eggman on the train. So while Eggman is trying to get away from Sonic, he's also having this encounter with Shadow, Eggman is quite good at multitasking now, isn't he? Though again, similar to Sonic Adventure, if I was Eggman, I probably would have gone for Elise last and collected the Chaos Emeralds first, so that way Sonic wouldn't be on your tail the entire time. But then the story wouldn't exist, so go with it. After his encounter with Eggman, this is where Shadow runs into Sonic and Silver and helps out Sonic, and this is where he and Silver travel back 10 years. Obviously, Shadow wants to go back there to see what Eggman is talking about. This is where he witnesses the Solaris project go bad and sees the creation of Mephiles. He's given the Curtain of Darkness by Elise's father, and then he and Silver split up to go after their respective demon. And this is where we see the chronological first encounter of Shadow and Mephiles.
お前は誰だ。
僕はシャドウ、シャドウ・ザ・ヘッジホッグだ。
シャドウ、忘れないその顔、その形。消す、きっとお前消してやる。
Pretty neat little self-fulfilling prophecy here, that Shadow being the one that seals Mephiles away, he ends up creating his enemy in this game. One other quick thing I want to say that's probably evident at this point is that I like how each campaign, each of the main characters has their own villain associated with them. Sonic has Eggman, Silver has Iblis, and Shadow has Mephiles. In general, while this game's story is incredibly sloppy, I would actually say the thing it does best is having these three separate stories that intertwine with each other. Generally, it kind of works, minus, all the time travel and plot issues. Speaking of time travel and plot issues, now that we have the context for Shadow's whole situation here, does this part not make any sense to anyone else?
置いていくのか。ああ。いずれどうなるかは分かっている。
Why the fuck would Shadow leave that behind when, yeah, you know what happens to it in the future? An evil fucking demon gets released and is up to no good. Whereas if Shadow just took that with him into the present, then that scepter would not be there and Mephiles would never get released and he'd have him still sealed away in his hand. Shadow could have defeated Mephiles right now by just taking the scepter with him into the present. Even as cool as they try to make him in this game, Shadow is still not too immune to the bad writing resulting in all the characters turning into morons. So Shadow goes through the portal and returns to the present. Again, extremely conveniently, this one lands him right in front of Rouge, and just like Blaze, Rouge has read the script, so even though she didn't see Shadow go into the past, she knows he was there somehow. And Shadow basically gives Rouge the lowdown that he figured out how to seal Mephiles, all they need is another Curtain of Darkness. And so he asks Rouge to look into that while they look for Mephiles. And one thing I noticed is I think there was one line of dialogue in an earlier cutscene that was moved around accidentally, because after Shadow comes back from the future, Rouge gets on the communication with Gun and asks them for information about the Curtain of Darkness, out of nowhere for no reason. It seems like that line was supposed to happen at this point after Shadow tells Rouge to look into it. I don't know how that line ended up getting moved around like that, but it's very odd. Now we cut back to Omega, who, while Shadow was having his little adventure in the past, has been tracking Mephiles. And he is currently, kicking Mephiles' ass, as it turns out. And here's where we get a very interesting piece of information about Omega.
さすがは究極生命体シャドウに対抗するべく作られたロボットだ。忘れたとは言わせないよ。人間たちにプログラムされたとはいえ、あのシャドウに未来世界で君が何をしたのか。
Obviously, what he did to Shadow in the future is one thing, but what I find interesting is that he was created to oppose the ultimate life form. This actually gives an explanation as to why Omega was guarding Shadow in Sonic Heroes, in case he ever managed to escape. And if that's the case, and Omega is capable of defeating Shadow, then don't forget that Shadow and Sonic are supposed to be the same, which means Omega is also capable of defeating Sonic. So, ironically, Eggman finally managed to make a robot that is able to take down Sonic, and he isn't able to control it. That's actually kinda cool in its own way, and adds a nice little extra layer to Omega. But anyway, Shadow and Rouge catch up to Omega, and after Mephiles chided him for what he did to Shadow in the future, I guess Omega is feeling it's time to come clean with things.
未来世界でお前を倒し封印したのはこの私だ。
ねえ、それってあんまりじゃない？シャドウは世界のためにずっと戦ってきたのよ。なのにそんな。
強すぎる力は常に世界から忌避される存在となる。恐怖が顕在化した時、世界は貴様の敵となるだろう。
シャドウ、もし世界のすべてがあんたの敵に回ったとしても、私はあんたの味方につくわ。覚えておいて。
ああ。
That right there is why people love Team Dark so much. We actually got to see this group of characters grow from literally wanting to kill each other to having this kind of bond here. And it's not just Rouge's sentiment that she says to Shadow, but it's also like Mephiles is clearly trying to sow dissent amongst this team by having Omega tell Shadow that he eventually is the one that seals him away in the future. But that is not enough to get Shadow and Omega to turn on each other in this situation. At this point, these three are a team, no matter what happens. It's very nice, though I will argue there are a couple of minor little issues here. Primarily that it's very unclear exactly what happened in the future. Why would Omega even attack Shadow to begin with? Even if humanity is targeting Shadow, why would Omega be with them? Unless humans manage to reprogram Omega or take control of him or something like that, it's very unclear what was going on there, and for some reason they do like a time skip to gloss over Omega's explanation of what happened in the future. I really wish they didn't do that. I would have liked to get more of the details of exactly what happened there. But still, the sentiment of the team is pretty nice. Mephiles tried to tear this group apart, but their bond is stronger than that, and they're still a team. One neat little piece of characterization about Shadow that's easy to miss is he doesn't really refer to other characters by their names most of the time. Usually when he's talking to another character, he'll just say like you or something like that, or in the case of like Eggman, he'll call him Doctor, and to me that's supposed to convey that Shadow doesn't really connect with others very easily. In Sonic Adventure 2, the only people that he referred to with their names was Maria, and at the end of the story, Sonic. By the end of SA2, he's developed a respect for Sonic, and so he's willing to call him by name. But of course, this is a new Shadow who's starting from the ground up again, and really the only two characters he refers to by name are Rouge and Omega. How about that? After this encounter during gameplay, there's no cutscenes for it, Shadow manages to get his hands on a new curtain of darkness, and so now they have what they need to seal Mephiles away again. So now all that's left is to go after him. They track Mephiles down to this desert, who is apparently going after Chaos Emeralds. Shadow theorizes that his goal is most likely to become one with Iblis again, and so these three have to stop him before he can make that happen. So the three manage to catch up to Mephiles and confront him, and he tries one last time to convince Shadow to join him, and Shadow's like, I know you're full of shit, let's just do this. And they fight and manage to seemingly defeat Mephiles, and they seal him back inside this new curtain of darkness. However...
闇の帳が。
今の僕には影を通じて吸収した君の力が加わっている。もはや10年前のようにはいかないのさ。 残念だけど君の力では僕を止めることはできないよ。
どうかな。
世界は必ず君を裏切る。なぜ戦う？君が命を懸ける価値なんかあるのかい？
世界が僕の敵になるのなら僕は世界と戦うまでだ。
Yeah, as I said, Shadow definitely has the best story of the three, but I actually do have a couple of issues with this ending here. My biggest one is, what exactly is Shadow doing here at the end? He takes off his little gold bracelets, and now suddenly he's like super duper powerful. What the fuck is going on here? Clearly the idea is supposed to be that those are like some kind of power limiters or something, but this literally comes out of fucking nowhere. This was not established earlier in this story or in any previous Sonic game. This is another one of those things that comes from one of the writers being a writer for Sonic X. Because in Sonic X, they actually do establish during the story of SA2 that Shadow wears power limiters because he cannot control his chaos power completely, and if he's allowed to just do whatever, then he'll lose control and spend all of his power. That's why he dies in the events of SA2 in Sonic X. And the idea of Shadow having power limiters in and of itself is fine. The issue here, though, is that this is not Sonic X. Sonic X is its own continuity separate from the games. It has never been established that Shadow wears power limiters before. That's never been a thing. To suddenly give him power limiters poses so many questions of why has Shadow never done this in dire situations in the past. This is another one of those things that makes me think that this story might be kind of a bit of a reboot of the Sonic series. But even then, this comes across as a Deus Ex Machina because this was not established earlier in the story. This literally just comes out of nowhere in this one scene here, and then is never mentioned again for the rest of the Sonic series. This is not okay. And then in terms of the general theme of what they're trying to do with Shadow's story here, I think it both works and doesn't work at the same time. Like I said before, this is very, very similar to what they were doing in Shadow the Hedgehog with Black Doom. And because of that, it has less weight to it because we already know that there's no way Shadow would ever team up with Mephiles. The reason I think this does still kind of work is it's not just that. It's not simply that Mephiles is trying to tempt Shadow to join evil, it's that this is kind of like a test of character for Shadow. Now that Shadow is free to make his own decisions, Mephiles is presenting him with the consequences of his decisions. If Shadow continues on the path that he does now, using his power to try to save the world and protect humanity, he's eventually gonna end up getting punished for that. And so it becomes a question for Shadow of, is it worth it to stick to his decisions even if the people he's trying to save end up turning against him for it? And Shadow decides that even if the path he's chosen for himself is ultimately going to lead to his downfall, he's going to stick to it anyway, and if the world that Shadow is trying to save decides that he is their enemy, then he's going to fight the world too. Not in a I'm gonna turn evil kind of way, but in a my goal is to protect the world, and if the world itself is going to get in the way of that, I won't allow that to stop me from protecting them. Again, this is very similar to how Shadow is written in Sonic X. Shadow is a very focused and driven character. Once he has a goal in his mind, he is going to pursue that with 100% determination. He is not going to let anything get in his way, whether that be foe or friend. And I think this is a pretty cool direction to take with Shadow's character. And it does a pretty good job of following up Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow makes his own decisions, and he sticks to them no matter what. It's lucky for the world that Shadow has decided to be a good guy. A number of people kind of look at Sonic Adventure 2 to Sonic 06 as like the shadow arc of the Sonic games because for some reason he got so much more attention and focus in all of these Sonic stories than any other Sonic character, not even remotely close. Shadow has more complexity to his character than like every other Sonic character combined. It's kind of weird, but it certainly does make for a pretty compelling character. So yeah, Shadow's story has some flaws for sure, but not nearly as many issues as the other two stories do. You know, I actually kind of like Shadow's story to a decent degree here. And now, like all the previous 3D Sonic games, once you finish all three of the stories, we unlock the last story. And the last story begins with Sonic getting fucking killed, and the screen goes all black and white, and in anime, that means this character is fucking dead for real. And of course, Elise is in love with Sonic, and so his death causes her to cry, releasing Iblis. And now Mephiles has the opportunity to fuse with Iblis and once again become whole and become Solaris. And apparently he needs all 7 Chaos Emeralds to fuse with Iblis, but due to lazy writing or cutscenes or whatever, due to plot convenience, he is somehow able to use 1 Chaos Emerald to magically teleport all the other Chaos Emeralds to him so he can fuse with Iblis. If the Chaos Emeralds are able to teleport each other to themselves, then doesn't that kind of break every single Sonic story ever where someone needed to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds because they only needed to get 1 and then they could use it to just bring all the other ones right to... I'm thinking about it too much. The story's badly written. Just go with it. Mephiles got the 7 Chaos Emeralds and now he fuses with Iblis. Clearly, Mephiles was really the actual villain this whole time. And a lot of people these days seem to think that Mephiles was a pretty cool villain, and while I like the idea of Mephiles and I like his relationship with Shadow, when you actually think about Mephiles' course of action in this game, Mephiles is a fucking idiot. 'Cause his plan was to fuse with Iblis, right? And he needed the Chaos Emeralds to do that, or apparently he only needed 1 Chaos Emerald to do that. And he goes through this whole rigmarole to have Silver try to kill Sonic, and having Sonic spend time with Elise makes her fall in love with Sonic, so that way when he dies, she'll cry, and that will release Iblis, and then he can fuse with him at that point. And all this stuff, you know, it was all orchestrated by Mephiles the whole time. Why exactly did he do any of this? All he apparently needed was Iblis to be free and a Chaos Emerald. So why doesn't he just go to the future, which he does, where Iblis is already free, and get a Chaos Emerald there, which he already does, and just fuse with Iblis in the future? Maybe he can only fuse with Iblis at the moment of Iblis's release? But if that's the case, why doesn't he just get a Chaos Emerald in the future, go back in time, and then kill Elise? Because, as has been established, Elise dying will also free Iblis. There's no reason to force her to cry. This is all just a bunch of contrived bullshit to tie these 3 stories together in a very forced way that doesn't actually make any sense. Mephiles' entire plan was completely fucking pointless. Remember when I said that this game's story reminds me a lot of the Star Wars prequels? Well, Mephiles very much feels like Palpatine to me, doesn't he? Where he's supposed to be cleverly manipulating everyone from behind the scenes in order to get his plan to work, when in reality the only reason his plan works is because everyone else is an even bigger idiot than he is. I mean, for fuck's sake, he even tries to do the thing where he gets Shadow to try to join him, just like the Emperor does with Luke and Anakin. So really, the entire plot of this whole story was essentially a giant waste of time, and Mephiles could have ended things before they even started if he wanted to. Man, this game is just so well written, isn't it? And now with Solaris whole, he, somehow breaks all of time or something. This is something I have a lot of issues with. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about Solaris itself, because I find this whole mythology here to be very strange. Because you have Solaris, the god of Soliana, and obviously Sol, that's referring to the sun. Yet for some reason, Solaris has time powers, and Solaris is also made of a fire demon and a shadow demon fusing together. I don't really understand how fire and shadow equals time, but also the sun, but apparently it does. And so Solaris essentially breaks time, and everyone ends up in this time-space rift where all of time is conflicting together or something. And can I just say, I really have an issue with this entire concept. The idea of all of time breaking and being thrown together doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. Like, Mephiles and Iblis fuse at a specific point in time, yet apparently there's still a future after that he ends up destroying. Like, I get the idea, you know, all of the past and all of the future from the beginning of the universe to the end, you know, even though that is kind of technically infinite or whatever, it all collapses in on itself if we look at time not linearly, but just as a singular thing. But the very nature of that really doesn't make any sense, and the way it ends up coming together in this story also doesn't make any sense. Because all the characters end up in this same place in the middle of this time-space distortion or whatever, but of course, all of the characters are taken from the same point in time at the end of the story. Even Silver, because remember, time travel in this game is not written like a single line that you can jump around. The past, present, and future are 3 different things, with time progressing concurrently, and so the end of the future also happens at the same time as the end of the present. If this was really supposed to be all of time converging together, then shouldn't there be like an infinite number of all of these characters taken from any given point in time? Of course not, because that would be weird, and we don't want to do that in this story, even though we're doing a time travel story, and that's what would actually happen if all of time were to converge like that. I mean, Blaze isn't even here, because at the end of Silver's story, Blaze disappears to a different dimension. But if all of time is converging, then why can't Blaze from any other previous moment in time be here? And even if we are only pulling characters from the end of the story, where's the second Omega? He should be here too. Oh wait, that's right, we forgot the second Omega exists. Okay, never mind. I guess by all of time coming together, they're talking about the 3 separate locations as time is written in this story. The past, the present, and the future. Those 3 have collided at the same moment at the end of the story. Man, do I really hate how they write time in this fucking game. But I'm gonna stop talking about that, because if I keep going on about this, I'm gonna have a fucking brain aneurysm. Look, if you're doing a time travel story, please don't do a thing where all of causality and time ends up breaking. They did the same fucking thing in Madoka, and I hated it there too. So anyway, all of our characters are stuck in this space-time distortion, universe-breaking whatever thing, and like, it's so fucking stupid. They're like, it's not long until the entire concept of time is completely destroyed. It's like, yeah, there's not that much time until there's no more time. That makes sense, right? And basically all the characters are like, well, I guess we're all fucked, but then Silver comes in with his endless optimism and is like, there's gotta be something we can do. And everyone's like, yeah, maybe there's something we could do if Sonic was still alive. And then Elise is like, oh, what's that? I feel Sonic's presence on the wind. And all I can think is, there's wind here? What the fuck? But yeah, obviously Sonic's not actually dead. I mean, he is actually dead, but not permanently. So the team gets together and they're like, hey, we can collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and then bada bing, bada boom, we can save Sonic. Although, if all of time is converging from the 3 different eras, shouldn't there be like 20-something Chaos Emeralds at this point, because every era has their own set? You know what, I'm not even gonna try anymore, it doesn't fucking matter. So all of our characters collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds in this weird lack of time universe thing, and then Elise, using the power of love, revives Sonic. And again, this doesn't really work because the romance between these 2 characters is not really well established. And the fact that Elise is the one that has to be able to revive Sonic is very arbitrary and just is like, okay, whatever, you just did that so she can kiss Sonic. And everyone goes on and on about the kiss, and like, I'll be honest, I really don't give that much of a fuck. Like, yeah, it's weird, but I'm not really that bothered by the fact that it is a human kissing a quote-unquote animal. I'm more bothered by the fact that the art style dichotomy between these 2 characters is so vast that I find it hard to believe that these characters are even from the same fucking franchise just looking at them. That to me is the real problem. It's not that this is bestiality, it's just that Elise kissing a character whose head is larger than her entire fucking body is just comical and impossible to take seriously. I don't know why they decided to go for a realistic art style for the humans when they knew this was going to be happening. Maybe they thought that they could try to make this work if they really executed the romance well, But they sure as fuck didn't do that, so this just comes across as awkward. So Sonic is revived and is in his super form, and he spreads that over to Shadow and Silver, as they are the only other ones that can take on super forms, as they are the only other ones that can wield the power of the Chaos Emeralds. And then they go to defeat Solaris, and they have a line where if you try to defeat Solaris now, then it won't do anything because Solaris exists in all of time at once. So killing him in just the present won't do anything, you have to kill him in the past, present, and future all at the same time, which again just forwards my theory that this game thinks that time is 3 different locations that exist concurrently with each other. If Solaris existed in all of time at once, then there would be an infinite fuck it, I'm just done. So the 3 Super Hedgehogs defeat Solaris, and then we have this one final scene where Sonic and Elise are somewhere at the end of time, or the beginning, or the collapse of everything, or fucking whatever. It's just a sentimental moment. We see back when Elise was a child, and the reason that her father wanted to do the Solaris project in the first place. He wanted to gain control of time, so that way he could bring back Elise's dead mother. A fine enough motivation for trying to play God, and I'm thankful they didn't, turn Elise's father into the ultimate final villain or anything. He just wanted to see his wife again and accidentally ended up causing a whole giant mess, which, that works. And now Sonic and Elise are back there, I guess, and have the opportunity to blow out the flame of Solaris and prevent the entire thing from happening from the very beginning. However, of course, that would mean erasing all of the events of this game from happening.
私とあなたの出会いも存在しなかったことになる。私は本当はたとえ世界がどうなったとしても
エリス、スマイル。
And now we return to where I began this video with. We're back at the Festival of Solaris, but now there are no evil demons or threat of the world being destroyed or anything like that, so Eggman has no reason to attack. And of course they do a little sentimental thing where even if the events of this game have been erased, Elise kind of almost has a feeling like she sort of remembers the wind that Sonic creates as he runs by. And that is the end of Sonic 06. I'll give it credit, I do kind of like the ending of this game, again, in theory, but, with the execution of Sonic and Elise's relationship, it doesn't entirely work for me. Her so vehemently not wanting to never have met Sonic. At this point, she's in love with Sonic, so I guess that works, but the reason she's in love with Sonic, I don't really buy. And personally, I'm not in love with characters that have, a weirdly close attachment to Sonic. They do the same thing with Chris in Sonic X, and I'm really not a fan of characters like that. But I do like what Sonic says to her there in that moment, smile. It's a callback to what he's been telling her throughout their story in the game. And it's not just him telling her not to be upset about that. When he's talking to Elise about her smile, it's him telling her not to worry about things, everything's gonna work out. This might be a problem in a situation we don't like, but if we don't do anything, nothing is going to be resolved, and that is what gives Elise the strength she needs to blow out the candle and say goodbye to Sonic. This is Elise running. It's a nice little moment. If this story wasn't a giant fucking disaster, then I think it would have worked pretty well. But overall, this story is quite the train wreck, isn't it? It's got just problems on top of problems on top of problems. And these are not the kinds of problems that would have just been fixed with more time. The very core of what they were trying to do with this story, I would argue, is fundamentally flawed in certain ways. And I'll be honest, playing all these Sonic Adventure-style games back-to-back, By the end of this story, I was really fucking sick of these big, epic, grandiose Sonic stories. I mean, maybe that's just because this one in and of itself is a disaster, but at this point, I was really yearning for the good old days of classic Sonic, where these were just trying to be fun video game platformers that had fun little stories and likable characters, and not much more than that. Now more than ever, I really question if this more shonen action epic direction for the series was the right one. I mean, this is the 5th fucking game in a row where the final boss has been some giant monster thing, and the entire fate of the whole world was at stake, and it was up to Super Sonic to defeat the giant evil monster demon thing, with everyone cheering Sonic on. You can do it, Sonic! And it's just like, how many fucking times are we gonna do the exact same thing over and over again and expect the audience to have the same reaction? We did the big epic giant Sonic stories and they were cool, but we don't need every single fucking game to do this. While I do like most of these Sonic Adventure stories, I really do not want this to be what the entire Sonic series is. Nowadays, you see a lot of people really begging for a return to Sonic Adventure-type stories, and it's been a while since they did a story like this, so I'd be okay with that, but I don't want every single Sonic story to be like that. I don't need every single Sonic game to have all this anime melodrama and end with the biggest fucking thing ever. Nor do I want every Sonic game to have like 3.5 hours of cutscenes. There's a reason so many people say the 2000 Sonic games were focusing way too much on story, and while I do personally like a lot of these stories, I do agree with that, and this is what I was talking about at the end of my SA2 story video. While these stories can be good, personally, I don't really think this was the right direction to take the Sonic series in. Let Kirby try to be Gurren Lagann, that series does it much better. But that's enough rambling for me about the story of Sonic 06. I'm out. For real this time.